Croeso I bawb I gyfarfod Bwrdd Ymddiriedolaeth Gwasanaeth Iechyd Gwladol Prifysgol Felindre. Welcome all to Felindre University NHS Trust Board meeting. Fel aelod o'r cyhoedd, gallwch fynychu'r cyfarfod I arsylwi. Mae hynny'n golygu y gallwch weld a chlywed y cyfarfod, ond ni chewch gyfrannu. Rydym yn recordio'r cyfarfod a bydd cofnod ohono ar gael ar ein gwefan yn fuan. O ganlyniad, gofynnwn yn garedig I chi beidio a recordio'r cyfarfod os gwelwch yn dda. As a member of the public, you can attend the meeting as an observer. That means that you can see and hear the discussion, but cannot participate. We intend to provide a video recording of the meeting, which will be available on the website soon after. For that reason, we ask that you do not record the meeting yourself. Hoffwn gyflwyno aelodau annibynnol o'r bwrdd. I would like to introduce the independent members of the board. A'r prifweithredwr ac aelodau gweithredol ac anweithredol o'r bwrdd. And the board chief executive, executive and non-executive board members. Hoffwn gyflwyno nawr gadeirydd y bwrdd, yr athro Donna Mead OBE. I would now like to introduce the chair, Professor Donna Mead OBE.
Bore da pawb a croeso cynnes iawn I chi gyd unwaith eto I cyfarfod bwrdd hwn heddiw. Good morning everybody, warm welcome to this board meeting today. This meeting is being live streamed as you've just heard. So those of you that wish to view the meeting at your leisure, at your own convenience, will be able to do so later because it will be uploaded for you to be able to do that. We had some trouble with the simulation technology at our last meeting, and I'm pleased to say that I think that has now been sorted for this meeting. So thank you to Bethan Davis for providing the simultaneous Welsh translation service for the meeting. So warm welcome everyone. We've got some colleagues online and we've got some colleagues in the room. So as always, use the electronic hand if you're online, raise your hand if you're in the room, and the board secretary and I will do our very best to call you in turn. Don't always get that right, but just bear with us. We will call you in so that you're able to raise your queries or observations. So if I could go to 1.10 of the agenda, which is apologies and welcome. So the first thing I'd like to just check is, does everybody know everybody else? We've got a new colleague in the room today, Llynnos Maidley, if I pronounced that right, Llynnos is new. So I would like to go around very quickly, just introducing ourselves to Llynnos. Let's start with you, Peter, we'll go in the room first.
Yes, I'm Peter Richardson. I'm the Head of Quality, Safety and Regulatory Compliance and Deputy Director of the Blood Service. I'm here on behalf of Alan Ross, the Director.
Hi, Llynnos. I know we know each other, Sarah Morley, Executive Director.
Hi, Llynnos. Andy Westwell, so I'm an independent member at university.
Morning, Llynnos. David Cogan. I'm the Patient and Carer Board Representative.
I'm Stephen Harris and I'm the interim independent member for finance.
Llynnos, we've met Jazz Abraham, Medical Director.
Hi, Llynnos, I'm Lindsay. I'm the Vice Chair, but I'm also the lead IM for ED&I.
And we've met Llynnos, and you've obviously known.
I know you.
Likewise, we met a lot.
A lot.
Right, okay.
There's a theme.
Good afternoon, Gareth Jones, aelod annibynnol, ni 'di siarad yn blaen.
Bore da, Nick Williams, Executive Director of Nursing, Allied Health Professions and Health Science. We met this one.
I'll call people in that are online in the order that I can see them. So first of all, Ola. Well, Ola is providing the service to the meeting this morning. Who are you, Mark?
Mark supports with IT, so if you go to...
All right, so I'm just, well, can I look at your screen?
Yes, of course.
So, Vicky, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, Llynnos. I'm Vicky Morris. I'm the independent member for Quality and Safety. Nice to see you.
And Kate February?
Yeah.
Kate, please.
Morning, I'm Kate February. I work for Audit Wales and I'm the performance audit lead for Valindra.
Thank you, Kate. I think that's everybody. I'm going to test you now that you know all the names and their roles. So anyway, welcome Llynnos, and Llynnos is here as our interim head of governance, and we're looking forward to working with you. So I've received apologies from David Donegan, our chief exec, who's on annual leave, Hilary Jones, who's on annual leave, and Alan Prosser, director of Welsh Blood Service. Are there any other apologies that I'm not aware of? No, thank you. In attendance today, as we noted, we've got Katrina February, audit lead for Audit Wales, David Cogan, who's our patient care representative, as you've heard, Peter Richardson, head of quality, safety and regulatory compliance, and deputy director of the Welsh Blood Service. You may have the longest title of any role in the trust. Perhaps we could have a look to see if that is the case, because you claim it quite often, Peter. But Peter's here representing Alan Prosser, and we have Llynnos, who I've just introduced. And then I would like to welcome Stephen Harries to our meeting as a newly appointed direct appointment by the Cabinet Secretary, independent member for finance. So just seems like yesterday that you were.
It was yesterday.
Anyway, welcome, Stephen. This is an interim appointment as we recruit a new IM for finance, and that process is underway. And Stephen, you will be a member of the audit committee, and you're going to be a member of NVCC Services Committee. So welcome, Stephen, and thank you for agreeing to take on this role.
Having me back.
And I'd like to welcome, not welcome, but just to say this is Lindsay Forrester's first meeting as our newly appointed vice chair. So wishing you very well in that role, Lindsay. And we've met and we've had some discussions about the specific responsibilities that Lindsay will undertake, which I'll be discussing with the IMs shortly. So welcome to Lindsay. I don't think I've missed anybody out. So having said that, can I take us to 1.30, declarations of interest? Are there any declarations of interest which haven't previously been declared pertinent to the items on today's agenda? No, thank you. We just had a pop-up to talk about the recording, but I did let everybody know that this was being recorded and would be uploaded. So that was that's been covered. 1.40 is the minutes of the Public Trust Board meeting held on the 27th of March. I'd like to confirm, please, that the minutes of the meeting are an accurate reflection of proceedings. I haven't received any suggested corrections. Are there any? Gareth.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Rwy'n edrych ar tudalen 8 o 10.
Oes.
Just cyn item 4.6.
Wait, hang on a second, I'm not there yet. I'm rolling. 6. Rolling, not rolling, sorry. Page 8, tudalen 8.
O 13. Ac yn y trydydd paragraff o ben y tudalen, mae yna gyfeiriad at dim llinellau amser ynglyn â rhai o'r bethau yn ymwneud â diwylliant o fewn ymddiriedolaeth. Ag o'n i jyst am holi os dyle fod na weithred gyferbyn na hwnna yn pigo'r pwynt yna lan. Achos dwi ddim yn meddwl bod ni yn gwneud yna.
So is the minute correct?
Yr munud yn iawn ydi.
Munud yn iawn.
Cofnod yn iawn ydi, ond y pwynt yn codi yw efallai.
So felly, when I've done the action log, I will ask, as I always do, are there any matters arising not captured in the action log? And we'll pick it up at that point, Gareth, if that's okay. Thank you. Nicola.
Annie Evans was in attendance in my absence.
Pardon?
Annie Evans was in attendance in my absence at the last meeting.
Okay. Gareth, that's okay. So if there aren't any other corrections to note, we'll accept the minutes as an accurate correction of the meeting that was held. And if I could take you to 1.50 now, please, colleagues, which is the public meeting action log. And you will note that all but 2 of the items on the action log are proposed to close. So first of all, I'll ask Non if you could talk to the 2 open actions, and then I'm going to suggest that we accept that the items that are closed unless anybody's got any queries. So Non, over to you, please, first. For the 2 actions which are open, which are 7.14, action number 3, and 4.10, action number 19. Non.
Diolch yn fawr, Gadeirydd. Rydyn ni yn y broses o gwblhau yr adolygiadau o'r terms of reference sydd gennym ni ar hyn o bryd. Mae proses ar gyfer diwygio rheini ar gyfer y pwyllgor datblygu strategol mewn lle. Mi fydd hwn wedi gwblhau y mis Gorffennaf. Rydyn ni wedi hefyd adolygu ac yn y broses o adolygu y corporate governance manual i sicrhau bod hwnnw hefyd yn cyfeirio at y pwynt gweithredu yma. Wedyn, dyn ni ddim mewn sefyllfa lle allai weid a chadarnhau bod ni wedi gweithredu eto, ond mae ei gyd mewn lle i gael ei weithredu erbyn mis Gorffennaf.
Thank you, Non. So do we change the deadline date to July?
Yes.
And then,
yes.
And having listened to the update, we change the deadline date to July. Thank you. And then the second one, please.
Ymddiheuriadau, mae yna typo yn y bocs lle mae'r diweddariad yn cyfeirio at fai 2024. Dwi wedi newid hwnna ar y ddogfen fyw sydd gennym ni. Eto, rydyn ni yn y broses ar hyn o bryd adolygu y polisi risg. Rydyn ni yn cael cyfarfod o'r governance assurance yn risg grŵp wythnos nesaf. Mae bwriad i ychwanegu y golofn gyda dyddiad targed ar gyfer y risg. Rydyn ni ar hyn o bryd yn siarad gyda y gwasanaethau i sicrhau bod nhw'n cynnwys y wybodaeth yna yn Datix fel bod ni'n gallu adrodd hynny i fewn. Mae Mel yn y broses o adolygu lle dyn ni o ran y nifer sydd yn rhaid i ni i ychwanegu, ac mae e wedi cael ei gynnwys yn rhan o'r hyfforddiant. Pan bod fi'n hyderus o hynny, fydda i ddim yn gallu cael y pwynt gweithredu yma, ond y bwriad ydy dod â dyddiadau rheini i'r gofrestr risg ym mis Gorffennaf. Ond mae dipyn bach o waith i sicrhau bod pawb yn gwneud hyn sydd ar waith.
So a similar action in relation to that. So we note that update, a very helpful update, thank you. And we'll change the close date to the July meeting.
Yes.
But does anybody want to raise any issues in relation to that? Lindsay.
I think the only point I want to make is really just noting, I know it's obvious that from the first action update to where we are now is well over 12 months on the first one, and getting that way on the second one, and recognising that there'd been, mitigating circumstances around that, but just wanting to think about going forward, if we're looking at some of these more technical governance matters, if we are assured that the resources will be in place to be able to move more quickly on these things in the future.
Yes, thank you. Llynos is in the room and is already adding significant value, and it's only week 3. That has been a challenge. He has done incredible work to help sustain and maintain where we are currently. And as we know, we have a significant improvement programme that we're putting in place as well. I am confident now that we will be in a position by July where both those actions will have been actioned. I think key to all of this is ensuring that the board and the audit committee in particular are content with the corporate governance manual, which is fast becoming our handbook for how we manage all of our activity in this context. That will help us all as an executive, as a board, but crucially for staff, so that actually it becomes a collective effort, not the effort of a few people in this building, which is where we absolutely intend to go with this. So Llynos's involvement in that process already is very significant benefit to us all. She had a meeting yesterday with the team to start to think about the improvements they also want to put in place to make sure that the manual reflects their experiences as well. So yes, I am confident that we're on track.
So that's the kind of explanation, and has it given you the assurance you require, Lindsay? Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So now, Gareth, are there any matters arising from the minutes which are not captured on the action log?
Cleirydd, so i fynd nôl at y cofnodion, felly, ar dudalen 8, mae yna gyfeiriad at bod dim llinellau amser gyferbyn a rhai pethau'n ymwneud â diwylliant yr ymddiriedolaeth. Ac dwi'n meddwl dyle yna bod yna weithred gyferbyn ar cofnod yna mwyn bod ni ddim yn colli'r pwynt.
Nawn ni sicrhau bod hynna'n digwydd. Diolch, Gareth.
So, so Non, can you capture that, please? And will that be an action for you, Non, when it goes on to the action log? Or is it?
I think reading it, and I'll confirm with Sarah.
Pardon?
I'll confirm with Sarah.
Okay.
It was.
Oh, it's captured. Yes, yeah. Right. Yes.
I'll confirm with Sarah. Make sure that the actions reflect.
Okay, thank you. So, Gareth. Okay.
Yr un dudalen, paragraff ola, eto dwi'n meddwl dyle na fod na weithred cyferbyn ar paragraff ola yna ynglyn â y survey i'r weithlu.
So if we capture that as an action, Sarah, I think this is another one for your team. And if I can leave it with you, Sarah, to suggest an appropriate timeline and set of actions, if that's okay. Thank you. Mr. Parach, Gareth? Okay. So that concludes 1.60, which are our matters arising. Oh, sorry, Lindsay.
So we've gone through the closed items.
No, we haven't.
Oh, no, sorry, yes. I did mention this. So we got all the other actions on the action log are proposed to be closed. Let me just reopen the action log. Does anybody want to comment on any of them? Lindsay, please. Can you just tell us which one it is?
Yeah, action 43, so the one right at the end of the table.
Right at the end.
Which was from the Strategic Development Committee highlight report, amending the Trust Risk Register and including an immediate deep dive at the May Trust Board meeting. We're looking at that at private Trust Board meeting, and I know this is the public action log, but I'm not sure we can close that because I'm not sure that we've got the deep dive.
No, okay.
We are discussing trams, but I'm not sure we've got the deep dive. So if we can keep that open.
Yeah, so we have a paper this afternoon and it depends on what that paper tells us as to whether we'd be able to close that. So we need to keep it open just for now. Do you think, Anne?
Well, I think that following the discussion of this afternoon, I think we will then decide what format that deep dive needs to take, because I think there's two elements to it, and we need to be clear about both of them because there's dependencies across the two. And yeah, so if we could pick it up there, and then we can decide whether we've closed it or whether we need to
or we
elaborate
for a different action. I think it's probably going to be a different action along the lines that you've just outlined, Anne.
Yes.
Gareth.
Diolch Cadeirydd. Ar y dudalen gynta, mae'n weithred 37.
Harry, which number?
37, yr un ola ar y dudalen gynta.
Yeah.
Yn y olofn lle mae'r diweddaru wedi cael ei roi, mae'n y gyfeiriad at waith ynglyn â'r meincnod ddim yn cael ei orffen tan diwedd mis Gorffennaf. Yr unfed ar 10 o mis Gorffennaf. Felly, dwi'n yn siŵr os ydy'r weithred yna yn barod wedi cael ei chloi.
Ah, right. I now have you updated benchmarking work package 9, target date extended 31st of July as further work has been identified. And we haven't reached the 31st of July. So what you need to know is, has that work been completed and
aros yr agor.
Yeah, or do we keep it open? Yeah, Lauren, please.
Yeah, so I'm very happy to keep it open. The reason I closed it is I understood the action to be that the dates have passed and needs to be updated in the development of the PMF table. So we've discussed that within the PMF group, and that's now got the updated date. So I mean, there's lots of work packages in that, and well, so there are a number of work packages in the kind of paper of the PMF that we track in QSP in here that are open. So they will be. It's not as if they won't be tracked anyway. So the work packages will continue to be tracked, and then the date has been updated as per my understanding of what the action was. But either way, the work is ongoing, and the date is July. So whatever you prefer.
Yeah. So it's not ready to be closed. Is the outcome from that discussion, I think. And but it's on track to be closed by the end of July.
Until the action was interpreted, but happy for it to be interpreted that way.
Is that okay, Lauren?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, Sarah.
Sorry, Chair. My understanding was the action is to set a date as opposed to.
That was how I.
Yeah. I suppose that's why. That's my understanding. But,
so does that mean that the so it should say. It says here target date extended. 31st of July.
Yeah, that was the action to update the target date of that work package.
That's not what it says here, though. So I think we got a way forward. We could have a long discussion, but we've got a way forward. I'm content, Lauren, from what you've said, that the work has been taking place,
and it's
and that's the important thing. Yeah. And we'll review it then in the July meeting and yes, hopefully close it off. Okay. Any other issues in relation to items noted as being proposed to close? Thank you. So we come to section 2 of the meeting. And the first of those is Chair's report. I'm trying to open. So I don't intend really to go through it, but I would like to extend thanks on behalf of the board to David Cogan, who attended our conference on May the 12th and spoke at that conference about his patient journey as a cancer patient. It was an inspirational talk, and we had 2 presentations, one from a patient and one from a family member of a patient undergoing cancer treatment. And it really did set the scene for the whole day and kept us focused on the patient as the centre of all our endeavours. And I want to say thank you, David, because you had to relive your experience in order to tell us about it. And I want you to know how much we appreciated that. I did say that in my summing up, but you weren't there at the end of the afternoon. So I did thank you most fulsomely from the podium. But now I've got an opportunity to thank you face to face at this meeting. And I will write to you and to your colleague to say thank you very much on behalf of the board for that. And it really did, Nicola, didn't it, and that Jazz, keep us focused on patients and families throughout the rest of the day. Very pleased that we've got our first art exhibition launched, and colleagues, if anybody would like to go and see it, it's down the corridor by the meeting room by Linnock 1, and it's a beautiful arts exhibition called It's a Still Life. Painted by one of our patients, because during her treatment she received lots of gifts of flowers while she was going through treatment, and looking at those flowers lifted her spirits, and she felt moved to paint them. And they're beautiful paintings, and this is not a plug, but I'm just letting you know they are for sale, and all proceeds will be coming to our cancer charity. So I'll take any questions. We had some VE Day was well and truly celebrated throughout the organisation in both Welsh Blood and over in and in the Cancer Centre. And I think I mentioned one thing in relation to Welsh Blood Donor Awards. We've been very busy again. Thank you to Vicky Morris, who attended the 2 evenings in Wrexham just recently, and I was in Cwmbran last week. There's been a development which our donors are very appreciative of, which is that sometime after they've donated given their donation, they receive a message which tells them where their donation has gone. To which hospital it's been sent, and the donors are really appreciative of that. I keep hearing that, so I just want to note that development and welcome it, and I'm sure that's going to keep going, isn't it, Peter?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. If there aren't any questions, the next item on the I can't see any hands up is 2.2. which is CEO's report. There is a report there for you to read. David is not here to take any questions, so I propose that we accept that. But I have asked Carl just to mention one item, because Carl is representing David as Deputy Chief Exec today. If you can just mention one item that I'm sure if David was here, he would have alerted us to in his report, Carl, please.
Yeah, so take the report as read. Obviously, speaking to David last Friday, mentioned about giving an update on the chair on the radiotherapy satellite unit up in Neville Hall. So just 3 points really. First, where we are in the process. So final building fit out and all the other unseen things are happening. And there's still a bit to do because, as you will recall, we lost a bit of time in the sort of early construction because of asbestos and flooding and other bits and pieces. So we lost about 12 weeks. We've been trying to hold on to that and sort of run in parallel. But it's happening as we speak. There's lots of people up there doing lots of work and working over weekends as well. So again, just shows the commitment of staff. In terms of opening, we're still looking to open in June. That's still the target date. We're looking to CT scan the first patient in June. And then the patient will receive radiation treatment 2 weeks after the first CT scan. So I'm not given a date yet because there's still a bit to do in terms of which week that will be. But we'll meet next week with a live go-live date on the 30th. That's the first bit. Second bit I wanted to do really was just to pay a huge thanks to all the regional staff who've been involved in this project. So I chair the regional project board, and it consists of ourselves, Powys, Taff, Cardiff, and Iron Bevan. And it's been a joy actually to work through the opportunity and some of the challenges, and everybody's been so committed to doing that. It's been a really good example of getting things done collectively. And just the last bit, I think, which was probably most exciting actually. I'm a bit spoiled because I went up there last Tuesday morning. I took the project board up there because we were able to get into the building. And it so happened to be a day like today, was blue skies, all that sort of stuff. And just to say the facility itself is fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic, and it was worth walking around. But just the other thing to note for the board is the general excitement around cancer patients who want to be treated there. Secondly, we've met with all the slice representative bodies across each of those because an Iron Bevan spans 5 or 6 sort of different local authority areas, and we've met with all of those. An overwhelming excitement, joy, thrill that the patients they represent they have less time to wait, and secondly, will be able to be treated a bit more locally than they are right now. But making the point, I've been keen to emphasise that we won't get the full benefit of this particular development in terms of close to home until we finish all of the work in 2027. We get all in the capacity. And the last bit, I suppose, is just to mention that we've got Iron Bevan, we've got some sort of local AMs, MSs going up there next week. Sorry, MSs and MPs, not AMs. That's old school, isn't it? There's just a bit of a walk around next week, and then Nicola and colleagues are working with invite some of our regulatory bodies as well, just to get people familiar with what we're doing up there. I'm looking forward to opening up. So that's a quick run through. So well on the way, still bits to do. I'll be able to report back following next week's board meeting on around about the 30th, where we'll go in terms of go live. So and at some point then clearly the board and other colleagues will wish to go up there and have a look at that facility when it's open and in full working order. So, yeah.
So thank you, Carl. So that is a development now very close to completion, and as you've said, so that is really exciting that that we've arrived at that point, and I wanted to make sure that that was partly captured in the minutes today. And I'll add one other feature. I'm picking up from patients also who are saying we're looking forward to being able to just go to Abergavenny and on occasions and not always have to come to Cardiff. But there've been a spate of interviews for new consultants just recently, and Neville Hall is being mentioned as one of the features which attracted them to want to come and work in Velindre. So you were there, Jazz, weren't you?
Absolutely, yes. We have somebody who heard about the satellite unit and is working in sort of Cheltenham and Gloucester area already as an established consultant, and is choosing to come and work with us, and we'll have a day a week in the satellite unit as part of a job plan, and also described how she's seeing patients who are travelling 2 hours from Wales to come to Cheltenham to be treated. So the impact that this will have is going to be really important.
Just to add one further point to that, actually. So Ruth Corbally, I think she's the Deputy Medical Director, Jazz, in Powys. Yeah. So Ruth's on the project board. So she joined me last week at the facility, and we were discussing exactly that point because they've got a lot of patients who are travelling out of Wales at the minute. So we're going to have a discussion about whether it would be more appropriate for them in terms of their particular needs as to whether they come now down to the Neville Hall facility. So there's a lot of opportunities immediately, but particularly medium to long term, about really providing high quality, safe care, which best meets patients' needs. I think that's the key point, isn't it? So it does open up a range of other opportunities for patients first and foremost, and then for organisations to support that.
Thank you, Carl. So that's a really helpful update, which we will note in the minutes. So we now come to section, can't see any hands up, section 3 on the agenda, which is quality, safety and performance. And the first item, 3.1.0, is our performance management framework. And we'll have Lauren and Matt and Sarah will present individual components of the paper. So you note the cover papers that show that you can see where this has been discussed previously and actions that have been taken. 10-second warning, because we'll come to you first, Lauren. I wasn't quite sure what the investigating the high number of RT breaches following Go Paperless transition. I should have come to you before the meeting, or Anne, and said, what does that mean? Because I'm not quite sure. So when we reach at the relevant point, could you answer that question for me, please? That's contained in the cover note. So there's no hidden agenda there. I'm just not quite sure what it means. So Lauren, if we can turn to you first, please.
So, so I was going to just mention those two things first. So at Executive Management Board, there were two matters that as an Executive Management Board, we wanted to highlight to Quality, Safety and Performance Committee. So one was on digital resourcing, and apologies because somehow we missed it in the EMB and the QSP version. It says that the level of assurance was agreed to increase level 3. I mean, so it's decreased to level 3. So the level of assurance for digital is recorded in here as level 3, as it was in QSP. So that was discussed there in terms of that decrease. And then the radiotherapy breaches as a result of the Go Paperless transition related to the satellite centre at Neville Hall project. So Anne can talk more about that. Then we talk about the discussion in Quality, Safety and Performance Committee, and in there we went through, there were a number of actions in the action log around trust board actions from the last meeting. So we did discuss those during the QSP. The levels of assurance have all remained the same apart from that decrease in digital. And then in terms of the development work packages, that is the updated version, which is being managed by the Performance Management Framework Group, and there wasn't anything in particular to highlight this time on that work. So happy to take any questions. So I was going to hand over to Anne, and then Sarah, Carl for digital today, obviously, myself for estates and sustainability, and then Matt.
Before we hand over to Anne, are there any queries at this point? Thank you, Lauren. Anne, please.
So you will notice from the slides this time we've taken on board the feedback about how the data is presented. So hopefully it seems more meaningful this time, but happy to take further feedback. In terms of radiotherapy and looking at the March position, on the 10th of March we went live with the Go Paperless project, which has a dependency with Neville Hall, but it's about how we can use ARIA, which is the host system, if you like, in radiotherapy, to better understand the time points in patients' pathways, and therefore we'll be able to plan better, but also the productivity will be better managed. And once the Go Paperless project is a key enabler in that whole timeline. There were some difficulties after the project, or after the switch over, which Lauren has alluded to, just with coding at the back end. So there were more breaches due to that data flow at the back end. Okay. And I guess the good news from that is that we have now recovered, and we see that coming through in the April position.
So there won't be any further breaches due to that issue.
So
you think?
The number of breaches this month was amplified due to the Go Paperless project.
Yeah. Okay.
You will see in the breach report we had greater numbers of delineation issues, complex planning, and there was another category I can't quite recall at the moment that was higher than what you would expect it to be.
Stephen.
So because I've been away a few weeks and trying to catch up. So the Go Paperless project, is that Go Paperless internally rather than Go Paperless in terms of patient communication? Is this about connecting our systems up?
It is the yes. Not in the Go Paperless with patients just yet, but we have ambitions.
This is about connecting our systems digitally.
It is for radiotherapy, and it's kind of removing the paper in the information flow piece that gets a patient from referral to treatment
all the way through the planning phase. So there's a number of different handoffs in there, and we want to make that completely digital. By making it completely digital, it's smoother, you're removing the risk, etc. But obviously there's some digital support that's required to help that.
Thank you.
Deal.
Yeah, so assume Go Paperless is all about efficiencies, right? So actually, when the system's implemented, it should have a positive effect on information flow and thereby maybe also number of breaches. So you hope always with Go Paperless it'll initial difficulties, new systems, etc. Longer term, we hope if everything goes well that it should have a positive impact.
Yeah, I'll come to Jazz in a second. So just wanted to seek assurance. I think I know the answer. So those breaches were managed in the usual way, of assessing the clinical risk, etc., etc.
Yes.
So and patients prioritised according to need if for those breaches. Yeah, thank you, Jazz.
Just to add.
Oh, sorry.
In terms of the rest of the Go Paperless, which we're now working with Varian to do the next stages, and we will over the summer see increasing information on productivity here. Once we'll be able to get the benefit out, it just takes a little bit of time, unfortunately. Yesterday.
Don't appear flippant, but it's a kind of no gain without pain almost, isn't it? So so perfectly understandable when you understand. Jazz.
Yeah, I think it's just to sort of shed a light on how significant this change is clinically, and it has been quite challenging because elements of this pathway have worked seamlessly, whereas other bits have not. And so but actually the place that we will get to will be far better than where we are currently. I think it's also just managing the expectations that there's also a capacity issue in being able to get to the plans on time. And I mean clinically, because the number of steps, of course, within that radiotherapy pathway, of patients attending, and we did use a lot of paper as part of that process, now becoming digitized. It's making sure that we do that in a safe way as well, and that's partly why it hasn't been as quick as we thought it might be, because there's many elements to consider. But also what we're trying to do is to align that demand with job plans and time, so that we can actually get into a better, sort of more efficient system of identifying who will, be able to address those plans as they come up. And without being able to see them in the system, it's been very difficult to plan. However, now if we can actually see the points and the demand in the system at different phases, because there are phases of outlining, checking, quality assurance that are required, and being able to map that out and visibly see it is transformative. I can't, emphasize how significant that is, but it's going to take time for us to almost match that capability of responding to it. It's not going to be an immediate switch. I'm just worried that you might think we'll not see any more breaches now. Not all of them occur because of this, but I think we will be working in a very different way as a consequence, but it'll probably take some months for it to settle down.
I think that's very helpful addition to what we've heard, Jazz, and can I ask if that's captured carefully in the minutes, please? And we sought the reassurance that where the breaches have occurred, they've been clinically assessed according to our protocol for doing that. Thank you. Gareth.
Dwi ddim yn siŵr os ydy'r cwestiwn yma yn ddilys yn y cyswllt hwn. Fe wna I ofyn beth bynnag. Un o'r risgiau sydd wedi bod ar ein cyfrestr risg am sbel yw'r nifer o e-byst mae clinicwyr yn derbyn. A fydd y prosiect yma o fynd yn ddibapur yn helpu bod ar sgôr y risg yna lawr?
I'm happy to answer that.
Okay, thank you, Anne.
So there's two elements to that, Gareth. One is this will help a bit, but we're also putting in place a cancer PTL, which is going to be kind of a key enabler for that. And the largest volume of emails is driven by the SACT pathway. So there's a component of them that are radiotherapy, but not as many. Help. But
you want to come in, Jazz?
I think it will help. I think you do get, I think the pressure is on the ones that, you know, when we're aware, if people are tracking patients as they are currently, and if they are aware that somebody might breach, you then get this email to 10 people saying who can step in to do this. It's often, actually, you know, in that kind of pressured space, and the planning should mitigate the need for that. And I think it'll be very interesting to see how that, you know, has an impact, but I think it will. But you know, I support what Anne said. It's largely the SAC space that we have. The noise is there, and the acute space is where we have noise.
Would it be helpful if, at a time and that you would think is suitable, that we kind of had a bit of a report and a review on this, that come to board, so that, you know, we understand the problem and we appreciate the rationale for the problem, what solutions have been put in place and how this has improved efficiency, productivity, communication, etc., etc. I think it would be really helpful. Yeah. If it's not too much work for everybody.
I know. I'll come to in a moment, but there are a number. I described the SACT performance at the moment. It's good, and it's continuing to be good. And it's a little bit like a swan. You know, you're seeing this graceful thing. Performance is good, but there's so much work underneath the water, and it's a bit like that across a number of different areas. And Jazz described the timeline that we can expect to see things actually delivering in. There is an awful lot of work in terms of the cancer PTL and just looking at the processes and outpatients, what we need to do in terms of prioritizing the digital infrastructure that we need to help make a difference and shift the dial, the ARIA piece and getting insight on top of that, and the productivity on top of that. So there's a number of different things that I think I just need to give some thought to how we might dovetail all of that to make it a holistic story, because there's dependencies across the whole piece. So can I give some thought to that, Chair, with a solution of some kind?
Or we could take our fences one at a time. You know, which is kind of, this is the whole issue that just arisen from radiotherapy breaches, and there was just quite a lot of information, and it's quite difficult to get that holistic, because even now there's a holistic view when it's kind of compartmentalized into boxes and tables and so on. And then if you gave it to us as a narrative, we'd say, can we have it in a table? I'm sure we would, because that's how perverse it is. But it just seemed to me there was quite a lot of information going around. If it's captured sufficiently in the minutes, let's take it from there. I'll see what it says in the minutes, and then I might just ask for a quick update paper.
I'm thinking that maybe I could describe that to you in a pathway diagram with some narrative attached to it, and it might just help.
And then we're looking at this bit. Yeah, that might be helpful. Yeah, that would be really helpful.
Moving steps and risk.
But we'll decide if that goes into the action log.
Yes.
Then, Lon, thank you. So, still with you, Anne, I think.
So my point about SACT, I think I've made. The team are working very hard. We are treating patients on time, and we have seen a reduction in the number of breaches. I think it's certainly been sustained into the performance that I saw yesterday, and so I can say we've got 3 months of sustained performance there. So unless anybody has any questions on SACT, I'll move on to WBS.
Nick wants to come in.
Yeah, it's not a question. I thought it would be remiss of us as a board not to thank Teresa Humphreys.
Oh yes.
I'm not quite sure.
Not to thank Teresa Humphreys.
Yes.
Who came in and worked with us. It was supposed to be for 3 months, but we were lucky enough to have her with us for a year, who's really helped us and helped the Council Service to transform our SACT
work and to really look at all of the elements. This is now ended her time with us for now. It was only ever predicted to be temporary, but just felt it was important that we factor formally.
I'm happy to note that in our minutes. Thank you very much, Nick, for that.
In terms of WBS, I think the thing that I want to...
Before we move on to WBS, let me just open up any queries, comments, observations from the board. Lindsay.
Can I just ask, there's in discussion there about, or a point there about patient pathway visibility, and I know that's the comes up. Yeah. And clearly it's, you know, very early days, but perhaps at a future board meeting we could have a sense of what difference that's making.
Yeah. And I was thinking, so we had our PTL meeting yesterday, and there's some, I really feel like it's coming together in a really positive way now. What it is showing is it's showing the data quality and a disparity across health boards and ourselves in terms of how we track and record things. So we're moving into that phase next week with conversations with colleagues. You know, I think I was quite excited and enthused by yesterday's meeting, and Sarah Dawson took it then to the SST Leeds meeting, and they were equally excited. So that's very, very positive. But I was thinking, how do I visualize this to everybody so you can see what it looks like and see the benefit? Because I think it's really helpful to be able to see a pathway on a line for a patient, and you can see where the issues are. So I think Donna's challenge about how can we get that holistic picture for radiotherapy, we need to apply that to the SACT as well.
Yeah. Thank you. So Welsh blood. You just got it. I've got it here. I'm ready.
So
I'm ready.
I'm going to assume red in terms of the slides. What I would like to draw people's attention to is the red cell serology turnaround times. We have been, as you know, we've been struggling with those. We've had meetings about those in QSP also. There is an improvement plan in place, but it relies on personnel and training, etc. So it takes time to feed through. What we have done in the last number of weeks is we've put together an authorization process, which means that we're looking at the turnaround at day 4, and we're checking that we have somebody to authorize. So the work is getting done. The bottleneck we have in the system is the senior skilled people to authorize the work once it's done. So we put a process in there at day 4. That seems to be delivering. We're monitoring it on a weekly basis. So my sense is that the next performance report we see at board will be better.
Okay, that's reassuring. Thank you.
Wasn't going to pick up anything else there.
Any queries then in relation to Welsh blood? It's not listed here, but I just wanted to note the difference which having using buccal swabs for recruitment to the Welsh bone marrow donor registry is having a huge effect on recruitment of the number of donors, such that we've exceeded the target that was set by the Cabinet Secretary in last year's appraisal, and that's just very gratifying, absolutely very gratifying, including recruitment from ethnic minority groups as well. So I just wanted to note that.
The points we pick up here are the ones that are not performing, so it's an exception reporting, because as you say, that's performing so well.
You're absolutely right.
To the top, sorry.
You're absolutely right. But I think the thing about an exception report is you can walk away thinking, is anything working in this place? So I just wanted to just use Chair's prerogative to say this is something good. Lauren. Oh, Lindsay.
It's just to say that in my experience, exception reporting can be about things that are going exceptionally well as things that aren't performing. So that's helpful to include that.
Thank you, Lindsay. Lauren.
It's
But yes, true. We need to, we'll build that into our mechanism. We have talked about it, but just so everyone around this table is clear. So the pyramid reporting is working fully now. So the detailed reports are considered at the divisional leadership teams with the 1 page for each metric.
Yeah.
Get back to that format. Then that is consolidated into the dashboard that comes with all the measures to EMB and to QSP, and then with the summary slides. And then this is the top of the pyramid of that trust board bit. But true, we don't actually do that at the moment. So we'll build that into the process. So it's exceptional.
So thank you for that introduction, I think, which is going to lead to something very positive, I think, which is great. So if there aren't any other questions, thank you, Anne, and I'll hand over to Sarah.
3 key metrics, obviously, in terms of workforce that we see in the slide. So in terms of PADR, and as mentioned earlier, we have got actions behind this data to actually bring us into compliance within this year, and that's something that's been very appropriately challenged in terms of QSP. You know, is what we're doing sufficient? Because we've not seen ourselves in target in terms of PADR. We have a significant overhaul of our PADR processes, and I think the training now that's going behind that will provide us that ability to have that step change. We're also obviously working very closely with senior leadership teams in cancer and blood services to make sure that they own that, and I absolutely can see that starting to take shape, and I think that's where we need to get to. We're also very clear that we need to work closely with corporate teams to again reflect a step change there, because we know we need to improve in terms of PADR. We feel now we've got the mechanisms in place to facilitate that. We get a very positive feedback on the PADR process as being more streamlined, more slick, more clear to people, which is always helpful. In terms of sickness absence, we are still tracking at 5.1% in the latest that I've had, which was the 20th of May, which is across the organisation. We've clearly got that 4.7 local target still in sight, and that's where we aim to get to by the end of this financial year, and that's where we've put in our INTP, and that's a very important local target for us. Again, coming back to the actions that we're taking to support reductions in absence, this is obviously clearly systematic, a whole range of things which impact on people, culture being one of them, and we talked about culture a little bit earlier, haven't we, in terms of an action and a discussion of board necessary on that. One good example though is that WBS can bring is they have developed 6 smart actions for WBS. It's an excellent example of where the senior leadership team are really taking proactive ownership of absence as a key thing to drive improvements in performance and improvements in a whole range of other things. Those smart actions were agreed by the senior leadership team there at the end of April, and have been discussed again, I believe, at an away day tomorrow by that team. So to my mind, it's a huge step forward where we're starting to see the actions driven by those more local teams and managers. And we will be working very closely now with the new divisional triumvirate in cancer services to have similar arrangements, actions and plans in place, because we need that local ownership, because it needs to be as locally owned as possible. Of course, that's what makes the difference, isn't it, in terms of these matters. Do you take any other questions, Chair?
Oh, no, thank you, Sarah, for that update. Any queries for Sarah? David?
Yeah, it's under the subject of workforce and well-being, and it's a share really. We held our patient care and partnership board meeting yesterday, and once again a number of Velindre staff came and presented projects or change. And I just wanted to note that whilst it's a patient board, there was quite a discussion yesterday on staff well-being and the impact. Whenever people come to our board meeting, they introduce change and they're looking for feedback. But the partnership board was very vocal, I suppose, in our forum about the impact that may have on staff. How are staff coping with the level of change, the level of, you know, service users coming in. So it was just a note that whilst it's a patient board, they were very aware of the workload and the potential impact that this may be having on staff, which again reflects back to the care and service that the patients receive at Velindre. So it was just a share of note, really.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I identify with all will identify with the comments that you just made, and we're very fortunate in this organisation that despite the concerns, and they're real concerns, it hasn't spilled over to affect patient care in any way that we're picking up systematically. So, but we can't rest on our laurels and assume that it will carry on like that. So that's really interesting, David. Thank you for pointing that out to us. Anne, you had your hand up. Sarah, did you want to come back? But let Anne first. Okay.
Yeah, just to support what Sarah's been saying, really, is that we don't want to rest on our laurels, and we're quite sure of the impact. You know, the impact of change is hard for people. We are on the 5th of June. We have organised a change management and resilience kind of refresher for teams, but also in terms of pointing to them to all of the tools that are available to them to help and to allow them some space to think and just understand that there are colleagues there who can help. So we're spending some time just doing that as a starter for 10.
Thanks, Anne. That's also really helpful. Sarah.
Thank you, David. That's a really good point, well made. And I think what we're seeing through our staff survey results, for example, is that people are feeling that pressure, and we see that response in terms of what people say about burnout, don't we? May not necessarily already resulted in absence, but actually is about that presenteeism, isn't it? People in work that are not well, and that's not what we want to see. So it's about making sure we keep quite close and tight in terms of the relative impact of all of these things on people. And what we have done by having very focused conversations now around staff survey around some of those topics is reflect that and say what are managers doing locally, what can we do more holistically, and then trust-wide to support that, open up mechanisms for people to access psychological support, for example, but more broadly in terms of wellbeing matters, what they say around impact on them. And this workshop Anna's describing is one of those key interventions, I think.
Thank you, Sarah, for that. Vicky, I'm sorry if I've missed you for a period of time. I just Lindsay just pointed out that your electronic hand was raised. Vicky, please.
That's fine. Thank you very much, Chair. I think I just thank Sarah for outlining the importance of leadership and the ownership of some of the matrix that you've set out within the PMF. I think we had a good discussion in QSP because we've got new leadership teams. The importance of achieving a PADR is about support for individual members of staff as well as achieving their objectives that have been set out. So there are many benefits to that, but we did note in QSP we've had over 3 years where we haven't achieved that at year end. So it's really important that the opportunity that we've got with new leadership teams embrace this, support their staff, but the importance of having a PADR is really important. So we just as a board need to keep an eye and track the improvements now with the new leadership teams. But thank you, Sarah, for outlining the response to that.
Can I just ask a question for clarification? You mentioned there, Sarah, about the 6 smart actions, and that started with WBS, and you're looking to how that might go into the cancer services. Is there something similar already, or will it also go to corporate services?
So the WBS senior leadership team, and probably Peter can answer better than I can, have for themselves looked at their performance and worked through what they feel are their smart actions. And I really would love to see that approach adopted now by the senior leadership team, the new triumvirate in the cancer service, but similarly, as I said, in corporate, because that's, that ownership at divisional level is absolutely key.
So they may well be different smart actions.
Yes, yes, that's what I intended. I hadn't caught that you'd said that it would be corporate services as well, so I just wanted to make sure that we've noted that.
And I think one thing I would like to note as well, Nick and Jazz, because you were responsible for putting the agenda together for the conference, Clinical Scientific Strategy on May the 12th, that there were several very detailed presentations about staff wellbeing. We discussed civility, if you remember, we discussed rudeness, we discussed psychological safety, and that was very much front and centre of the agenda, wasn't it, on that day? If you want to comment on that.
Yeah, we felt it was important to, yes, it was a celebration, and we heard from a number of our staff in respect of their leadership and advanced practice journeys, but actually it was really thinking about, how do we learn lessons from elsewhere, and how do we have the most effective multi-professional teamwork in this organisation. And we had a couple of really good presentations focusing on teamwork and from the Civility Saves Lives, Joe Palmer as well, which was very, very well received.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, Lauren, sorry.
No, I was just saying it's digital next.
Yes, that's what I was just going to do. I was looking to see the hand.
But I realise I don't know whether you had a full list of the names, so apologies.
Yes, I do. I'm know what I'm doing. Put it like that. So, Matt, please.
It's digital next.
Oh, digital next, is it?
Yeah, obviously, so Carl's not with us, Carl T. Yeah, I mean, just two different things, I suppose, in terms of 4 measures. They speak for themselves. It says there, the first one around IT business continuity, they're largely, half of them at least, are international programs. Carl and I particularly now meet every Friday with JCW just to make sure that they are continuing to support us and NHS organisations in resolving any national issues. The second one is relatively good news. Still more to do though in terms of cyber training. I'll pick up cyber in the risk register as well as, obviously a theme across all organisations and all industries across the whole globe, but I'll touch on that because there are some risks here. But in terms of the training, that is going the right way, but needs to be sustained and further improved, because I think the point's often been made that if we get to 85%, Stephen's back with us now, that means 15% aren't trained and sufficiently competent then. So that's a problem, isn't it? But good news on that one. Then the other two, I think it's interesting, actually. I was just reflecting yesterday, I was looking at these in terms of the earlier comment about people are doing a great job under quite significant pressure. I think these are quite important ones for us to understand that we're delivering a relatively good service, which is responsive. And also then the people that we are serving are relatively satisfied with the service they're getting. So those two metrics on the right there, they're indicative. So once you get underneath that, there's still issues we need to work closely with colleagues and resolve. So I'm just going to pause there. I'd perhaps pick up some of the capacity, capability issues under risks, if that would be helpful.
Thank you. Any questions or queries for Carl? I've just lost my, here we go. Stephen, please.
Just, I suppose it's a more general question about the content of this. Now, obviously, this is a well-established set of content. As you picked up, Carl, in terms of cybersecurity, one significant area of risk is staff not being trained.
Yeah.
But the experience of we've read in the news of some major retailers is the other risk was either suppliers or third parties who interact with these systems. So I'm not necessarily saying we need to change these things, but I'm just conscious that this whole cybersecurity risk of third parties being attached to our systems legitimately is introducing more and more risk. And where there comes a point as part of the assurance of the board needs assurance around the safety and security of those systems, which may have to be in private, because obviously the very nature of that information, if it's made public, may actually cause more problems than it solves. So I suppose just sharing that thought with the board in terms of next time we review what we're actually putting in this document as a key measure and key set of assurances is whether we want to extend it now maybe in private, to include the risks and the way we're assured around third parties legitimately connecting to our own systems, typically through DHCW, which you did reference already. So I know it's being done, it's being picked up.
Thanks, really important point, Steve, because I think the sort of CAF compliance is the sort of standard. Yeah. I think broadly speaking, this organisation is a sort of top the middle of the pack in terms of NHS organisations, in terms of where we are. In terms of the point you make, yes, I think we need to provide further visibility on where we are against those. But I think broadly speaking, going forward, most of those things are contracted for, aren't they? So whatever contracts we sign with IRS or whoever, I think the concern is more on legacy systems and legacy arrangements. So I think, yeah, we are on that, but I think it'd be important that we bring sufficient information which gives ourselves assurance and also the committees of the board. So I'll speak with Carl Taylor about that. But yeah, I think that's a really important.
I take your point, Carl, about it's contracted for. But I know, I'm not major retailers have been saying.
Yeah, well, yeah,
that's contracted for in their contracts. So their third
false assurance, Steve. No, I'm just saying we'll bring it, and then that will identify further work that we need to do. No, I'm not. I think we, like everybody else, it's a risk which is ever present, isn't it? If Marks and Spencers are struggling with that, I suspect some NHS organisations.
I read somewhere in the last few days that human error has now been identified, not necessarily sabotage, but human error was responsible for the breach in MS, which is really interesting. I have a query in relation to digital, which is about the compliance with IG and cybersecurity statutory and mandatory training, and that it needs to be maintained. Yes, it does. I was just a bit startled to see that corporate was so low, was below target, given that the whole board was trained just very recently. So but maybe there's a time lag between that training and these data. But the whole board received cyber training, security training at the last board development session. So just leave that for somebody to take a look at. Right, colleagues, I am working with two contradictory lists. I apologise for that. None has now just sorted them out. I got one list which has got a different order from another list. So I'm going to go to estates, infrastructure, sustainability, health and safety, and then financial services. Two lists which don't align with each other. So can I go to Lauren for estates and health and safety, please?
Thank you. So there were just 2 points I was going to pick up across these pages. The first was it's referenced in the action log, but to confirm that there was a question on our other sites other than Lincoln Centre and the Talbot Green in terms of the compliance with planned preventative maintenance, PPM. And that's been corrected in this report. So it said no data available previously because this is drawn from our buildings maintenance management CAFM system, and we are still monitoring the other sites manually. So, but we are looking at it manually. We've been through that data, and they are all 100%. So that's what we're reporting now, and they are on a phase to get into the new system. We're just completing the final pieces of getting all the buildings onto the new system. So that was that. And then on health and safety, it was to highlight that this is the first report where we've also got our NWSSP data in the dashboard. Appreciate lots of us are thinking about how we reflect the accountabilities of the trust effectively. For health and safety, the way in which the statutory legislation as staff trained us on as a board is clear in terms of the statutory organisation responsibility. So as well as NWSSP attending our quarterly health and safety trust meetings as they have done, and Health Technology Wales is saying we've now got the data in the reporting through to Executive Management Board and Trust Board. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Lauren. And I know, got shared services estates are included in in the tables on this occasion. So any queries, questions, or observations for Lauren? No, thank you. Just to let you know that we're going to do finance next, and then I'm going to go through performance management framework, looking at the individual levels of assurance, so that we can agree on the level. Okay, so after Matt's report on finance, please, Matt.
Okay, so we will be picking up therefore 3.2.0 in terms of the finance report, because it is shown separately, just to explain why it is. It's in the PMF, obviously as part of that integrated performance, but there is a statutory standing orders and SFA requirement to include certain information in the finance report, which is why it's more lengthy as you come into that individual item, which we wouldn't want to burden the whole of the PMF with. So that's why, just so you know, there is a separate.
That's really helpful.
Because people will wonder why have you got that huge report there? There is some requirements.
And there's a lot of there for duplication, isn't there?
So I'm not going to go through, and I don't take you through all the detail of that. This is the March report, so it's the full year reports for last financial year. Basically to say the three key performance indicators, revenue balance, staying within our capital resource funding limit, meeting our public sector payment performance. All three have been met, subject to audit, which is ongoing now. As you know, we've already completed the first month financial reporting for the new financial year we're in. And at the moment, that is on track in terms of our financial plan and what we submitted. So I haven't got any other questions, just to point out that when you come on to the level of assurance, you'll note in the detailed report, currently that is not identified in there, and it was picked up in QSP that we need to make sure that, like in the PMF, that we are identifying in the cover paper there the level of assurance. And the reasoning for that, we will do that.
Thank you. Thank you. So going forward, Matt, will we continue? Non and I were discussing yesterday what we do about this, because there's quite a bit of duplication. So I appreciate know exactly what you're saying. We have to have the full finance report as a separate agenda item, because that we're compliant then with our own standing orders, but we wanted to be able to triangulate with everything else, which is why it's also in the PMF.
I'm comfortable if you wish to, I guess, append it to the overall PMF report, but there are certain things I have to include in that report, which wouldn't want to burden a slide. You wouldn't be able to fit on a slide deck. And
yeah.
It's just.
So does that mean we're content with the current way, or are you having a think about
further conversation?
Further conversations, okay. That's a presentation issue, not a content issue. So I can see Lindsay's hand is up. Just Lindsay, please.
It was just some more thought on that. Again, if everything's kind of within kind of parameters, then that would make sense. But if there's something that's exception that you would need more discussion on, it's just thinking about where does that sit between the PMF and actually a separate item that's on the finance. So LTA is a more detailed kind of discussion, for instance.
I think the finance performance section, I can start to tease out some of the things that we were putting out in the detail report. At the moment, I'm not sure it's doing that. It's reporting on the basic measures, but I don't think we're putting out those risks. So if we're not going to do the separate finance report, then clearly I need to make sure that slide deck in the PMF is pulling out those issues.
But from what you're determining, we have to have the full financial report.
It can be changed in terms of the way the look and feel of it, but there's certain content that's got to be.
It has to be in there.
The standing financial instructions. And it's boring accounting stuff, I'm afraid, and I don't really understand necessarily. No, it is, because it's like having stuff on the balance sheet, the technical stuff on cash flow. Meant to report that to the board, and I do. You can ask me questions on it, but unless you're in the depths of financial accounting and understanding it, it's not going to be helpful, is it? You want to know what the risks are. Are we going to meet all of our key performance indicators? And if we're not,
we want to know that, but we also want to be compliant with what we've said that we're that we're going to do. So if I'll leave that between yourself and Non as a presentational and maybe and our IM director for finance to maybe who's not listening.
I would say yes.
I should have said not making eye contact with me.
No, I'm always listening. I'm like a smart speaker. I may not be looking at you.
So if you three could look at the presentational issues that we've just discussed. Thank you. Gareth, please.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Just pwynt o gyflwyno, ffordd mae'n cael ei gyflwyno a gweud y gwir. Yn y bocs sy'n rhoi'r diweddariadau o'r mis diwetha, mae'r pwynt bwled cynta yn dweud the draft and audited year-end position is 0.42 million. Bydd ddim yn gwybod os ydy hwnna yn beth da neu'n beth gwael o'r datganiad yna. Dwi'n cymryd oherwydd bod
Are you still on the PMF now, Gareth? Yeah, okay. I'm just trying to find it.
ar slide financial performance.
Thank you. Yeah.
Ac dwi'n cymryd bod yr sefyllfa ar ddiwedd y flwyddyn yn dderbyniol oherwydd mae'n wyrdd yn y blwch uwchben.
Sorry. The three key performance indicators, as I said, are all being met. So the 0.04 is a small underspend against the.
Dwi ddim yn gweud yna. Sorry, it doesn't say that in that update from the last month. I presume because it's green in the monthly timeline above that it's an underspend, not an overspend.
Yes, it's the cumulative position in that table, so it's actually 42,000 cumulatively underspent. I think the figure is 0.04 in month, so that must have been the March. So if you look, you're right. The green table, it should probably say, as well as saying green somewhere, underspend or overspend. Yeah, I think is what you said. Yeah.
And it does set it out, those three performance indicators set out in detail in the full report.
They are, yeah. It's probably easier to read from that report in the detail.
It is, absolutely. But we won't revisit that. We'll leave that with
no, we need to,
yourself.
We need to update that to make it
Stephen and Non.
Thank you.
Mae hwn I gyd mewn sawl fer.
Okay, thanks, Gareth. So, colleagues, that's all the reports that we're receiving under the PMF. So we note the performance management framework now for assurance. The individual levels of assurance are noted in the report, and I would like to ask the board to concur with those levels of assurance. So for the Rhondda Cancer Service, level 3, actions for symptomatic, contributory and root causes, impact from actions and emerging outcomes, which has led to the conclusion that that should be level 3. Are we all agreed? Yeah. So Welsh Blood Service, again, level 3, actions for symptomatic, contributory and root causes, impact from actions and emerging outcomes. Are we all agreed Welsh Blood Service is 3? Thank you. Workforce and Wellbeing, level 4, increased extent of impact from actions. Everybody content that workforce is level 4? There's nod, thank you. Digital Services, level 4, again, actions from symptomatic, contributing root causes, impact from actions and emerging outcomes. I hope that doesn't become just a, I understand precisely what the comments on the rightmost column is saying, but sometimes they can just, you know, be put in without thinking. So I'm just, because it's so repetitive. Are we content that digital is 4? Thank you.
It's 3. It's 3, but it's 4.
4 on the table. Yeah. So we've agreed it's 3. Is that right?
Yeah, level 3.
Level 3. Yeah, thank you. Data infrastructure and sustainability. 3.
Yes, that continues to be 3. Yeah.
Health and safety. 4. Financial services 4.
Financial performance for, should have been changed on your script for that, hasn't it?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Would it be more straightforward in the next meeting if I did the scoring immediately after the particular performance that we're looking at?
Yeah, that'd be neat. Yeah.
So I'll do it like that next time. Okay, Sarah.
Sorry, Chair, just for a second, in terms of our table, what we're doing there is just repeating the definition of the levels as opposed to what we're saying about each of the subjects.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, that's the way each level is described.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. My apologies. So that concludes 3.1.0. So now we come to the actual finance report. So I'd like to invite Matt to present this item, take the trust board through the financial position, which includes the year-end position of March 2025. The report will cover one of the ongoing discussions that we're having about the LTA and the financial values and the contract rebase, which you're all very familiar with, the integrated medium-term plan, the financial plan and forecast, and the key financial targets and KPIs. So that's all contained along with other information in the financial report. Over to you, Matt.
I said when I was doing the summary piece in the PMF, I'm not going to repeat that. So essentially the 3 key performance indicators have been met. Long-term agreements were all signed off. There was some negotiation, obviously, around certain contracts that we had to compromise on some of the income that we'd receive, Halvar and then 2 of the other local health boards. That's set out in the exec summary. Then the only other bit is in terms of the IMTP, we set a balanced plan which we met, and we delivered the savings target that we'd set ourselves. So those are the key pertinent points. And I will take any questions, bearing in mind this is a retrospective look back on the previous 12 months financial year.
Thanks, Matt.
The only other key point to say is in QSP, there was a clear feed up. If you look now in the later paper, summarising the QSP discussions, that there needs to be escalation through our chief exec to the All Wales Chief Exec Forum around the baselining issue you just mentioned around LTA, because it affects all NHS organisations, not just Valindra.
Yeah,
there needs to be that wider debate.
We always knew that would be the case. Yeah.
So you'll see that's teased out in the.
I've got 2 people with their hands up, so that's Stephen first and Gareth. Can I just ask a question for understanding, right? Which is, I don't understand the underachievement in relation to WBMDR, which I take to mean the Welsh Bone Marrow Donor Registry. So I don't understand how we can underachieve on that. That's not a challenge. That's just help me understand what that means.
SNEL rate of the income target. So there's an income target of funding, obviously, as you know, we get for when we're providing the resource out into the donor across the world, and we're not covering the income that originally we set ourselves, probably going back, I don't know, it's Peter can help me out here, 10 years, and not
before I started, yes.
Before even Peter started. So part of the, improvement in the registry through the local squads and all that will increase the chance, I guess, for batches and therefore this income improvement, but it takes time. I don't think we're ever going to get back to that original target because I wasn't around when it was set, but I don't think it was set on sound foundations. I think moving forward,
it was set on an exceptional year.
Yeah,
as a stretch target. Let's try and achieve this again, not recognising some fairly unique circumstances.
So if we is this about when we transport stem cells to a match anywhere in the world?
Yes. it's the income we get though for the actual provision of the stem cells. Because obviously each registry will get paid for.
If you like, this is an output measure, Donna. So this is, the output of all of the work that the registry does is that we collect stem cells and we charge the recipient hospital for those. So we have a target, traditionally, so that the stretch target's been to facilitate 80 of those per year, and that brings a certain income in. What we're saying is in the last year, we achieved around about half that.
It has been improving.
But it is improving. So what we're seeing is the increase in donor recruitment that's been going on for perhaps 18 months is now just starting to feed through to the system that our register now has a greater chance of Welsh donors being picked as the match. So it's a logical timeline between what we can control, which is the recruitment. What we can't directly control is the output measure, which is the registries that choose a Welsh donor.
And so much of it is just, it all depends, doesn't it? Whether there's a match.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you would think statistically, the more you've got the more people on the register, the more likelihood there is of a match. But it's
we're starting to see that. We always knew that there was going to be a timeline. What we didn't know is how long the timeline was going to be. Actually, it seems to be about a year, 18 months.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't quite understand the funding mechanism for it. I do now. Thank you very much.
It's an income underperformance, essentially. We're not getting the income in that we've set as a negative budget target, because that's what it is.
But so it's a financial performance dip, but it's not a service performance dip, because if we haven't got a request for a if there isn't a match,
we're meeting all of the requests that come in.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Request that comes in, we're meeting them, and it's also there's a stem cell piece, but there are other blood products that we supply as well as part of that, and we meet those needs as well. The last time we did the calculation, and as Peter said, we're learning about this all the time, is we think we'd have to have about 120,000 people on the registry to be able to deliver at this level. So we've got a way to go to do that, but we're learning all the time.
Thanks, Anne. That's all really helpful. Thanks for your indulging me and giving me the explanation. I appreciate that. Stephen.
Well, first thing I'd like to say congratulations again coming in slightly under target, as we seem to do every year. So very well done with that. Just looking at the exec summary of the report, we've highlighted some of the key issues, which is summarised very neatly. But I've also gone into the detail of the attachment itself, and I notice on a few instances where you're reporting that one of the key enablers of achieving the bank's position where we've fallen short of savings was that we had significantly higher bank interest than we were expecting. Now, obviously, there are many things in our control, but bank interest rates and bank interest earned isn't one of those. But obviously, we've managed to benefit from that. If we hadn't had it, maybe we'd have found another way of managing that. I'm just interested, I suppose, going forward into the new financial year, how confident you are that we will have a reduced reliance on the vagaries of bank interest rates and bank interest earned, and that we will be looking to deliver on the savings and the saving targets that we were hoping to deliver on in 2020 or 25. So we're highlighting this because I think it's just an issue the board needs to be aware of.
It's a good point, and it's a general point really around what your general point is more around non-recurrent savings, having to bail out the fact that we can't identify sufficient recurrent savings. Bank interest being one, particularly, obviously, that is completely out of our control. We have assumed that was non-recurrent. There is a baseline target, so we do have an actual income target set a lot lower, clearly, than the plays of 4 or 5% interest rates. So I think from memory it's about 1 to 1.5%, and we've met that for many a year. Obviously, there has been times where it's been below that, and we've been struggling, like the target you've just picked up on, where we were underperforming. So every year, and we're not unique in Velindre, across Wales, when we have our targets as health organisations, there is a mix between recurrent and non-recurrent savings. And the bank interest one will have to be replaced by other non-recurrent measures. every year we, as an accountant, you'll know we have provisions on the balance sheets, and sometimes there are things that are no longer needed. We thought we would have to pay for something, or we were providing for a cost that was expected to be X, and it ended up being slightly less. Use those mechanisms to offset some of the gaps and other issues where we don't deliver on recurrent savings. We also have other ways of doing non-recurrent savings around one-off improvements people may do. So we're not wholly reliant on that target to deliver our balance plan. As I said, largely it's the base position of that 1.5% we've got to meet. There'll be other mechanisms. The main thing is the service divisions really, I suppose, are key in delivering the savings targets. They're the ones who come up with the plans. They're the ones who have to have tight project management and performance management around those. We then, I guess, as a finance team, will help with these non-recurrent measures that we can come up with. Should they not deliver, but they can't be relied on.
It's not quite a dark art, but it's it kind of is in that kind of spectrum, really. Gareth is next, if that's all right. Unless is your one directly related to that?
Yeah, but Gareth first.
Gareth, then, please. Did you have any more, Stephen? That you wanted to say?
That was fine. Okay. I was just cleaning the board was cited on that particular issue.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Right, na I fynd diolch Cadeirydd. Dau bwynt ar y papur o Sky. Cynta o ran cywirdeb. Ar yr ail dudalen, mae yna ddau ffigwr yn ymddangos fyna ynglyn â'r arian dyn ni'n golli o Hywel Dda. Un yw 0.483 miliwn, a'r llall yw 0.843 miliwn. Ai dylen nhw fod yr un peth, a dwi'n meddwl mae'r un lleia yw'r un cywir.
I didn't get all that, Gareth, but I think you're referring to the 483,000 figure that's referenced, which relates specifically to the NICE high-cost drug income.
Yeah.
And then later, and I talk about it potentially increasing into the year that going forward of being a higher figure of 843,000, because that then brings in the 360. So if you look at the last bit, 360,000 is the activity. So the LTAs, the contracts are made up of two parts. It's the patient activity, the income we get for that each treatment. And then there's a separate part of the contract, which is okay for the SACT patients, one of the high cost NICE drugs that they've had. So in last year and this year, so we've had to do a deal again this year, we've had to reduce the NICE high cost drug income by 483, but they have been threatening us for 2 years to say, because of the redirection of patient flows, we are going to take let's round it up to 360,000 off you for the fact that the numbers of patients that come into Velindre have dropped. They're now paying Swansea Bay Health Board for those treatments, and they're having to still pay us that 380k, which is, fixed cost largely, because we would have lost the margin.
Is still specifically to Hywel Dda?
Yes.
It's
all Hywel Dda. And if you imagine that contract is only about 1.8 million, 1.6 to 1.8 million in total. So this is, roughly a 50% reduction. Small contract, but big issue for that particular.
Yeah.
So it's the activity bit, and it will hit us next year. I don't think we're going to be able to negotiate another year of not losing that.
Yeah. Ar ail pwynt, Matt, os gwelwch yn ar y dudalen nesa, dyn ni'n gweud bod y risg arian... Dudalen 3, bod y risg ariannol ynglyn â'r additional capacity implemented, bod y risg yna yn aros gyda'r ymddiriedolaeth. Allwch chi roi rhyw syniad o faint yw gwerth y risg yna?
So I think you're referencing now the last, in section 2 of the exec summary, I think, which is talking to the investment we made of 1.3 million in capacity. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So, as you recall, throughout last financial year, I was getting more and more concerned when we were looking at our long-term agreement income.
Yeah.
And we were not recovering through the marginal income, which is the income you get from activity being above the baseline that you'd said.
Yeah.
And I was talking in the realms of being 800,000 short. And then a lot of work was done with the digital insight team, the cancer services senior team, finance, reviewing were we missing activity because of some of the changes on some of the systems that Anne's talked about. So the new radiotherapy planning and activity systems, did that have an impact on some data not being captured, and also making sure we were counting things against our contracted currencies correctly. So we did a bit of work there. There was also increase in activity as the year went on, and that positions improved. So what you can see there is the end point of the year was not an 800,000 shortfall to that 1.3 million, but a 240,000. There's still a small gap there. But obviously, as we go through this year with increasing demand, my expectation is that will catch up. The key is what we can't do then is recommit further investments until we've caught up and covered the 240. And then we can look at how is our forecasting of activity going, working very closely with the service, and what can we invest in this new financial year? So can we invest 600,000, 800,000? Obviously, making sure we're pretty happy that we know where the activity is going.
Byd fyddwn ni'n gallu neud y gwaith yna.
Yeah, well, that's a piece of ongoing work that we're doing with the service, and it needs to include the health boards and the operational meetings that we have. So we have 3 operational meetings, as I understand it, between the cancer service and the relevant local health boards. Because obviously, as you know, our demand is driven by what is on the books of each health board in terms of who they had referred in for cancer, where are they on their pathway within the health board in terms of diagnostics, surgery, and it's that information that needs to flow into our model from each health board. The PTL, I'm hoping, will help with some of that demand forecasting, because that really should be the tool that will enable us to picture the whole landscape of demand coming in, and then what it means for us and our services, and then what does that mean in terms of the money side of it.
So have you identified a kind of a currency, if that's the right word? So the number of fractionations dropped, so that's a kind of underachievement, a good thing to happen, but it dropped. But the amount of time that goes into planning goes up significantly. And is there a kind of currency for that yet?
If you looked at the 4 years of our long-term agreements and the income on the different parts of radiotherapy planning, because you see a switch between income dropping on the treatments because of, and only to do with hyperfractionation mainly. Breasts, hyperfractionation, moving into prostate now, so there'll be an element of drop there.
Yeah.
But like you said, more complex planning and therefore an increase in the planning income to correspond. So, 3 or 4 times the length of planning time needed on hyperfractionated patients compared to non-hyperfractionated.
Right.
So you can see that quite visibly if I showed you a graph on the incomes for the 4 years. The issue then is,
should that smooth out the deficiency, the underachievement?
There is an offset, but there is still a gap and an issue that we need to investigate as to why the treatment income isn't fully compensated for by the planning, because it's not just about hyperfractionation, is it? There clearly is, I guess, in terms of activity for radiotherapy, other things going on in terms of not maybe being at the levels of demand growth radiotherapy treatment that we expected. That's the bit that I think needs further understanding, should we say.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Gareth, thank you. Carl.
Oh, sorry, yeah. No, I was listening. I just wanted to summarise Matt's points, really. I think sustainable organisation is 4 things we need to do, aren't they? First, I think, is continue to derive value, efficiency, productivity, as Matt said, because that gives us best use of resource. What we've got now, made best use of it, benchmarking. So that's step one, because that allows us then to go to the commissioners and agree the contracting model, because we've got to have that to be able to have a fair argument of what the real price is compared to other cancer centres and blood and transplant centres across the world. So the second bit of that then is continue then to pursue further investment with JCC and others. And the third bit, as we know, is to look for additional investment through income, either research and development, new or novel services. There's a series of steps, aren't there, for us to become broadly sustainable in the next 3 to 5 years. Got some of that stuff in place, but not all. But we've got to get that first foundation base, haven't we, about demonstrating we're getting the best out of what we've got. It benchmarks well, because that then really gives us the evidence base to go and talk to our commissioners, go and talk to government with a really strong, coherent argument. Without those things in place, we always get pushback, don't we, about, well, are you really efficient, are you productive? So there's about 3 or 4 things we need to get done to give us half a chance of being a sustainable organisation which delivers all of the high quality services that patients and donors should rightly expect of us.
Thanks, Carl. Really helpful. Gareth, please.
Just yn gefn hwnna, cadeirydd Gai. A yw'r gwaith meincnod na wedi cael ei wneud nawr, ac os yw e, beth yw'r canlyniadau, sut ydyn ni'n cymaru gyda mudiadau eraill fel y Christie neu'r Marsden?
Well, perhaps Lawrence and others are doing some of the work on the benchmarking, and Peter might want to talk about European Benchmarking Alliance and Matt about. So perhaps Lauren first, and then Peter on blood. So I think we are Lauren, and then Peter.
So across benchmarking excellence, we've what we've got to is we've discussed what that means for us as an organisation in terms of priorities in detail in a couple of workshops with the Flindra Cancer Service leadership team. And there are a number of key priority areas, including the performance management framework. And you would have seen, actually, you may not have seen, in the Quality, Safety and Performance Committee this month, the updated WBS metrics of the PMF with the relevant benchmarks were noted there, so that they'll be included in the PMF going forward. So that's the PMF work. The other initial priority was accreditation with external bodies, and Nick has been leading on that. So between Nick and I, we thought the best way of taking this forwards, I don't really discuss this as an exec team fully yet, is to have a community of practice around all of these benchmarking and excellence types of work, because they're all interconnected and there's lots of interested people across the organisation of all different staff groups who want to get involved. So we're just working out what that means at the moment, but there's the 2 initial things that we're doing, the PMF and the accreditation.
Just un pwynt o'r gefn, ydyn ni wedi cymaru costiau hefyd?
So I've done work in the past, looking at, you can imagine, wanting to understand how do our costs compare to peers, both in Wales, so the other 2 cancer centres. So I actually led a project through the finance delivery unit, actually, because if you can imagine, they basically focus on all of the acute benchmarking of costs. So there's loads of data and information, but there was nothing really around cancer. So at a very high level, just purely for clinical and medical oncology, which are the 2 specialties that have got specific codes identified, I did a piece of work across Wales. Largely, we are on a par in terms of the Welsh cancer centres, with some differences up and down between organisations. You can imagine Velindre being a specialist cancer centre. Our wards are purely focused around cancer patients, whereas if you go to the Betsy Cancer Centre or Swansea Bay Cancer Centre, their cancer patients are within a general medical ward. So you've got differences in ward costs because of that. which are quite obvious when you do start doing the benchmarking. But overall, when I did the piece of work, and I also then compared it with some of the English cancer services, ACT services in Velindre were coming out very favourably and efficient, given you look at the volume of work and the cost base of those services. Radiotherapy was looking not so efficient and relatively. It wasn't in the worst quartile, but it was above average in terms of those efficiencies. Well, you imagine in radiotherapy, though, it depends at what point in the cycle of, I guess, your investment in new capacity you are. Because it's such a fixed cost, heavy investment, as you can imagine in new Linux, you can have, where you've invested in extra capacity, a situation where you've got a lot of fixed costs locked in, but you're not at the point of full productivity and using that capacity. So that one is more difficult when you're benchmarking to get a fair comparison on those cycles. The piece of work since David's been here and making contact, with our key partners in England, so the Clapham Bridge, the Christie, and the Royal Marsden. I've hung back a little bit, waiting for my time to go and start talking to the directors of finance, because I've done some research and I've seen that they have a benchmarking group where they compare their costs, but also their productivity, efficiency, and some of the national metrics in England they've got, which I would encourage us here to use the same ones in Wales, where they compare each NHS hospital in England on certain metrics of productivity. You need to combine, don't you, the cost, productivity, but more importantly, then the outcomes at some point through our problems. I'm going to start that journey. I've made contact with one of the DOFs, so I'm in there in that group now, and we can then start to see, well, how can we start to pull together meaningful comparisons to three centres that are more similar to us than maybe the two Welsh cancer centres that they're in the midst of a big health board.
And they're not comparable centres either, are
the way
they?
they will operate in the service they deliver. So I'm saying at the start of the journey on that, so maybe in 12 months I might have some meaningful information that we can share alongside the word that the wider PMF.
Yeah, very interesting.
And I think just the really crucial bit about what Matt said is the comparability.
Yes.
So things are measured differently in England. Pathways are measured differently. Units of current, so therefore the unit of currency is different. We're going to have to start comparing apples with apples, and at the moment it's really difficult. Even looking at the data quality issues that are coming out of Cancer PTL across Wales, we don't measure things in a consistent way. So we need to go back and, everybody's interpreting the guidance, but local interpretation of the guidance is causing us to have variability. So I couldn't put a large enough caveat around that. Large government health warning.
Thank you. That's both very helpful inputs, and we look forward to there's going to be a lot of detailed work involved in that, Matt, but we look forward to it needs to be done to give us the proper evidence base that we need going forward.
It's vital, isn't it, for our own internal assurance, and we can make improvements, can't we, where there are genuine inefficiencies, but also to prove to our commissioners we are very productive and efficient in this area. Therefore, you need to invest more where we're saying to improve. So,
well, that's the logic anyway.
We also want to prove to our patients that actually the care they're receiving is comparable to the best across the UK. So that's really key as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Carl was next. I need to finish this discussion shortly, please. Carl, if you could be brief.
Yeah, so I'm just going to cover Peter's point. I think there's two other things then we can do. So we can do what we can. There's a national aspect to this as well. So we need to then work nationally to improve the commissioning arrangements, because if you compare us with England, we don't have tariff, don't have payment by results. So we can demonstrate we're efficient and productive. We've got to agree a currency and a cost and way commissioning. But that piece of work gives us far more power to our elbow to influence what happens in this next. So and I think it's same for blood and transplant as well. So that's the point I was going to make, Chair.
Thanks. It's turning into a kind of agenda item on benchmarking if we're not careful, and we don't have that on the agenda, so we're going to start slipping in time shortly. So, Pete, is your hand up, Peter? Yours would be the last comment on this, so okay.
I want to make a couple of points of assurance to Gareth's point that, you know, as has already been mentioned, yes, we actively participate in a twice yearly benchmarking exercise with the other European blood services. So we're one of a cohort of about 30 services comparing each other. And it's fair to say that on some measures we're at the top of the scale, some measures we're at the other end of the scale, and many times we're somewhere in the middle. But I would absolutely reiterate the point that's already been made about, are we comparing apples with apples? Have we got the same currency? The other point that I would make is that the UK blood services as a group are also raising a few questions about the fact that the benchmarking tends to be highly operationally focused, doesn't look at qualitative measures, particularly quality measures, and it's very easy in some cases to hit your efficiency measures by not being able to supply the units that your hospitals want. The most efficient thing you can do is do nothing, because that requires no resource and deliver nothing. So divide one into the other, it's 100%. As soon as you start doing things, your efficiency does tend to come down. So as a relatively small blood service, we sometimes get hit by economies of scale on some of those measures, but in other areas we absolutely excel. But as I said, for me, I just wanted to watch out that you've got to triangulate those operational benchmark measures with the quality of the care and the quality of the service that we're provided. And I'm not sure we've got that in the blood services space yet, but it's something that the UK is leading the march with.
Thanks, Peter. So we've had a useful seminar basically on benchmarking, which wasn't an agenda item, so it has cost us quite a bit of time, which I'd like to come back. So it could mean forfeiting a coffee break. So bear that in mind. We've got one item before coffee. Two. I don't think we're going to be able to have a coffee break actually, but I do need a cup of coffee. I'm parched. Which is 3.30, which is the risk register, which Non, you're going to take us through the trust risk register, and in particular the extract from the risk register, risk scoring 12 and above for quality and safety, and 15 for all other domains.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Gadeirydd. Yn ymwybydol amser, na i ddim yn mewn I ormod o fanylion, ond fe hoffwn I dynnu'ch sylw chi at ffaith bod y papur yn crynhoi y symudiadau o fewn y gofrestr ers cyfarfod diwethaf y bwrdd. Mae hefyd yn cynnwys papur ar gais y bwrdd ar y risgiau yn ymwneud â'r gweithlu yn benodol. Yr unig fater arall hoffwn I gyfeirio ato yw'r ffaith bod y Pwyllgor Ansawdd Perfformiad a Diogelwch wedi ystyried y gofrestr yn ddiweddar ac wedi awgrymu bod y sgôr ar gyfer cadarnhad yn codi o 2 I 3. Fe drafodwyd hynny hefyd yn y Pwyllgor Archwilio, ac felly mae'r papur o'ch blaen chi yn cymerawdwyo y newid hwnnw ers y cyfnod diwethaf. Mae cydweithwyr o gwmpas y bwrdd yn fwy abal na fi I esbonio y narratif sydd yn yr appendix ynglyn â'r risgiau penodol, ond mae'r papur yn ceisio crynhoi rhywfaint ar hynny. Hapus iawn I gymryd unrhyw gwestiynau pellach.
Thank you, Non. So, colleagues, I'm opening the floor to ask for questions, and we're going to be asked to note the risks in the quality and safety domain with a score of 12 and the other risks a score of about 15. So that's the purpose of this discussion. And are there any comments or queries, please, for Non? Vicky, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's just, we did discuss this in QSP, but just for completeness, on the cover sheet, we've got about the risk 3448 has been mitigated and therefore no longer at a level where it needs to come to the attention of the Trust Board. However, the narrative doesn't include how that's been mitigated. It says about the risk has gone from the level to below the threshold for board, but it would be in the full details, it is there, but just for everybody to be able to reference that, and we did have that discussion.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Thank you. Gareth.
Cyfeirydd, ar dudalen 5 o'r papur, mae yna y themau y risg yn ymddangos ym mharagraff 2.5. Ac fe wnaethon ni drafod hyn yn Pwyllgor Archwilio. Oherwydd bod hon yn ddogfen cyhoeddus, mae'r risg fyna o dan patient safety risks. Ac dwi ddim yn rhoi delwedd da iawn yn dangos rhain heb mwy o gyswllt ynglyn â pam maen nhw yna. Dwi'n gwybod bod yr manylion yn y gofrestr ei hun, ond yn y papur cyhoeddus, falle dylen ni roi mwy o gyswllt.
100% fy nath na fi drafod yr angen i gael y narratif yna o hyn allan. 100%.
So, does this mean we're going to update the paper?
Or but a papur fel y mae.
Or record it in the minutes?
No, yeah.
Okay.
That's only the, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Gareth. That's really helpful. Thank you. Lindsay, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on one of the risks under the Welsh Flood Service. So it's on
what pages down, please?
Page 3 of 12 of the register itself. Not in the covering paper, but
3
in
of
the
12.
register. And it's the number 8. And so I just noticed that we're saying in the narrative that the trend and direction of travel is that there's no movement, that the risk score remains unchanged and will do until the replacement system is live. So, and no further controls or mitigations can be identified. And I was just thinking that we've got a target risk of 4, but we're still at 12. And just wondering if there's, because this is about extensive manual workarounds, are there actually no further controls? So management checks, anything like that can be done to mitigate and bring that risk down.
So we believe that we've done as much as we can in terms of the manual checks and controls. I think, Jazz, you had the privilege of walking through this process with us and the team, didn't you, about a year ago, seeing the work that's in there. The key thing for us is that we are now well into the detail of delivering the replacement systems that will actually remove the need for these manual data transcriptions, manual checks and counter checks, etc. That is due to be delivered in the second half of this year, and that will mitigate to a large extent this risk. It'll certainly take the score down to an acceptable level. But this is something that we have been keeping under close watch and managing very, very carefully for several years. And as I say, there comes a point when, certainly in terms of checks and their manual checks, the more checks that you introduce, the less accurate your results become. I think the general feeling is that a second check is probably as far as you want to go. You want to go into a third check. But we've also taken the opportunity to look at, can we simplify paperwork if we've got to collect information on a form, can we make sure that the flow of data collected in the form is logical so that your mind isn't having to jump around and get confused. We're trying to give people allocations of undisturbed time so that they can focus on high accuracy, high impact tasks without distractions, etc.
So can Peter just interrupt you just for a minute for the sake of time? What you're doing is going through the mitigations that we already know about are in place. And Lindsay was saying, is there more we can do? So that's the question we need answering.
But at this point, it doesn't feel as if there's more we can do here other than focus on delivering the replacement.
Yeah. And I suppose that just, to me then, means, are we considering our risk tolerance around this? Because we're still here showing our target level is 4, but we're maintaining a 12 and have done for some time, I presume. And I absolutely take what you're saying, that the answer is to get the replacement up and running.
It's 6 months away about, isn't it?
Yes, it's just somehow acknowledging that we are managing a risk risk level that's outside our tolerance, but for a period of time.
Yes, I think that's a fair reflection.
Yeah. I did want to just say one other thing, which was that I really appreciate the due dates now, kind of showing you practically all the.
On the actions, we still have some work to do on the target dates for mitigating the risk entirely, yes. But thank you, that's really good.
Thank you. Stephen.
It's only a quick comment, really, not a question, because I know we've tight on time. I'm just looking at risk number 11 on the share bill. It's just an observation, I suppose, because this is a public document. So in the narrative explaining we are, we're announcing that we've got a deficiency in our firewalls and that certain parts of Castle aren't covered by the firewalls, and they won't be for another 2 years. So I know why it's there to provide information assurance, but I'm not sure it's something we really want in the public domain. It's announcing a weakness in a very sensitive and delicate area.
And kind of leaving it hanging almost.
Yeah.
Well, can I come into that? So I agree. I mean, just the other point is not factually accurate as well. So it's misleading in terms of, so I've met with the team. If you break down each of those risks individually, 3, 5, 9, 4 Windows clients as an example, we're down to 2 client servers in the whole organization. So, and that's going to be done by next week. So we just need to get really tighter on what they are, what's to do, when they're done by. And I also agree with what Steve, albeit, to be perfectly honest, everybody knows what's going on in cyber across the world. I think it's still important that we take the right actions to do as much as we possibly can to protect our internal information. So I think I'll go back with the team now and work with Non to work at exactly what should be in the public domain for public interest, but what is a security issue for us. So it's not 2027, by the way, that we'll have the right appropriate arrangements in place.
Content with that, Stephen?
Yeah, I am,
yeah. Thank you. Are there any other points to raise in relation to this item? So we note the risks, as I said, in the quality safety domain with a score of 12 and in other domains for above 15. And we've captured all the points which have been raised, which some of them will feature in the action log now going forward. So thank you very much. And the next item on the agenda is the trust assurance framework. And again, this is one for you, Non, to present. And currently, the current assurance level is level 2. So we might need to contemplate that as you work through it. And I think, Non, we discussed yesterday, this is the last time TMF will come in this format.
Yes, that's correct.
To this meeting. So perhaps you can just highlight that issue as well. Thank you.
Bydd ddechrau gyda hwnna. Diolch Gadeirydd. Mae'r taff fel ag y mae wedi gyflwyno chi heddiw yn cael ei gyflwyno i chi am y tro olaf, gan bod y Bwrdd Gweithredu yn ystyried nid yn unig cynnwys y taff ar gyfer y cyfnod nesaf, ond hefyd ffurf o siâp y ddogfen. Mi fydd hynny'n cael ei ystyried gan y Bwrdd Gweithredu ddiwedd y mis hwn. Yn y cyd-destun hwnnw, mae'r ddogfen bresennol yn cadarnhau newidiadau, mae'r papur cyflwyno yn cadarnhau newidiadau symudiadau ers y cyfnod diwethaf yn mis Mawrth. Fi'n siŵr fod pawb yn hapus i gymryd sylwadau ac unrhyw cwestiynau sydd gennych chi ar y risgiau penodol eu hunain. Ac rwy'n edrych ymlaen i gyflwyno ffurf newydd ar hon i chi erbyn y cyfnod nesaf. Yn y pwllgor achwilio, fe drafodon ni hynna yn benodol yr angen i sefydlogi y ffurf hwnnw cyn gyda sy'n bosibl, ac adrodd nôl o bosib o fewn cyfnod o 6 mis ar pa mor llwyddiannus mae'r templed newydd yn y cyd-destun hwnnw.
Thank you. There's a little bit of a time lag between how you finish speaking and the translation, which is fine.
Diolch, Betha.
Okay. Thank you, Non, for that. I'm opening up the floor for comments, observations and discussions, please. So we'll have the new framework in the July meeting?
Yes, that is the plan, yes.
Oh, Vicky, it was just your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's just to reflect the discussion that we had in QSP, because you referenced an assurance level of 2, but we'd actually agreed increasing the level of assurance to 3 on this, because actually what we were able to demonstrate in our discussion and in the paper is some of the progress that's been made in terms of how this TAF has been taken forward. So just to reference that QSP discussion.
That's really helpful, Vicky, because I wasn't at QSP, so not being aware of that discussion, I was just going to raise that issue, given what we've just heard. So, would we all be agreed that the trust assurance level, the assurance level can be raised to 3? We concur with QSP. Yeah, I think so. So that's really helpful. Thanks, Vicky, for that. So, if there aren't any other points, we note the current status of the trust assurance framework and now look forward to the updated version, which will come to the next meeting. We are due to finish this meeting at 1. It's 12:10. We could have a 5-minute break, but just a 5-minute break, I think, you know, for sort of a comfort break. Bring your coffees back to the table. Please, if you don't mind, if you could come back by 12:15. Yeah, we stand a chance of finishing on time. hopefully Lindsay and Lauren will join us shortly. Oh, there they are.
We just need Ola.
Thank you. Thank you, diolch yn fawr. So, croeso nôl, pawb. Welcome back, everybody. So we've now come to item 3.5.0, People's Experience Framework, and I'd like to welcome Tina Jenkins, our Head of Quality, Safety and Assurance. You arrived a bit earlier, Tina. Thank you very much for that. So you're going to present this item, which we have read, just to let you know that we've read it. And it's the National People's Experience Framework. It was launched in April just gone. Advocates the adoption of an always-on approach, which we've known about for some time, that needs to be the approach to experience, using both active and passive methodologies, enabling experiences to be left at a time and location convenient to the individual, which is very important. And can you please take us through the paper, which we're going to be asked to approve? Thank you.
So, like it says in the paper, this is an amendment review of an existing framework, and the framework has been undertaken in extensive consultation supported by Welsh Government, and all health boards and trusts have been involved in that. So an important aspect of the framework is that it tries to pull everything together, so all of the ways that we gather people's experience, and that's obviously all our service users across both divisions, donors and patients, but also family members and staff stories. So it's kind of people's experience across all areas, and it looks at complaints, compliments, stories, incidents, surveys that we use, lived experience, so people's groups, partnership groups, and staff experiences and equality. So a really helpful component of the assessment is the trust self-assessment. So there's a national self-assessment in this. So organisations, it gives an example of what good looks like, so you can measure yourself against where you are with that. So we've been quite ahead of the game in the trust. With permission, I took the self-assessment out of the draft document before it was approved, so we could start on seeing where we were against that self-assessment, because it was a big priority for us, isn't it, to improve our people's experience and how we report that through the organisation. And I thought I didn't want to duplicate something when something new was coming out. So we've been commended as a trust for how we've taken that forward, and then we've been used as an example with other areas of how we've done that. What the self-assessment has done though, so the self-assessment you can see there in 2.1, splits it into 5 separate domains. So you've got leadership, your capacity and capability to collect your feedback, using people's feedback then to drive quality improvement and learning, how we report it, and how we analyse and triangulate that feedback. And we are amber on pretty much all of those in terms of the RAG rating of red, amber and green. We are green. What we're doing better actually is our reporting and publication, but what we haven't got is enough people's experience feedback to be able to really do anything tangible with that. So I think where we've got our biggest area is around our capacity and capability of how we gather that, how we collect it, how we start using it then to properly inform where we make a change. I've already engaged with David as part of the partnership group, and I'm working with Andrew and Welsh Blood Service, how we can really work with donors to make sure we turn this, isn't it, from a framework into something much more operationalised. But what it has highlighted is that we've got a lot of work to do in the trust, a lot of work that we need to do collaboratively. We've set up a trust-wide working group with a lot of different people across the organisation, so we can look at accessibility, how we get to our hard-to-reach groups, we can look at equality, we can identify with workforce, and we're also, you know, behind every patient experience or donor experience, there's a staff experience as well. So how we can use that as well, because the same problems are, people are facing the same problems or the same things are impacting, and the positive stories around that as well, getting real balance and things we need to change and things we can learn from what we do really well and build on that. So so I think, you know, we've got a lot of work to do in this space to really be able to bring that to life, but we're already on the front foot of knowing what we need to do. So happy to take any questions. One other thing to mention as well is 2.2 of when this was launched. The People's Experience Survey was launched at the same time. So this is a national survey that all areas are using, so we can use some benchmarking. That data is collected by the NHS exec and then is produced on the Beacon dashboard. So what we've identified already is we've got a low number of survey responses. So again, that's something that we do need to work on, and there's some national work going on to really be able to identify, you know, where we are with that, how we can benchmark. And there's been some teething problems really around the survey. We've already gone live within the Cancer Centre with the national survey. We're waiting to go live in the Welsh Blood Service with that survey as well. So we can report further, obviously, on that as time goes on. We went live on the 7th of April in the Trust, and then happy to take any questions on that.
So thank you, Tina, very much. So presumably as you undertake the surveys and do whatever you need to do to increase the response rate, that will be reported to QSP?
So it would be reported like we do currently through it's replaced the My Belinda Experience survey. And when we do go live in Welsh Blood, it will replace the post-donation survey. It'll be translated. You can't change. There's 10 questions in the survey, core questions that you can't change. You can't change the order. You have to ask them like they've set out. But what you can do is you can add questions, so you can make it more specific to the Cancer Centre or to Welsh Blood Service. That has been agreed. And they only collect then from the NHS executive the 10 core questions to be able to compare and benchmark against other areas.
Across the country. What I'm thinking, Peter, and you may want to comment on this, is there's very good response rate in the Welsh Blood Service from donors, and how this will dovetail in with what we collect currently about their satisfaction with the donor service, which does get quite a good response rate. And then there's also another survey. There's another survey going on currently in Welsh Blood, which is the evaluation of the FAIR trial, you know, for LGBTQ plus communities donating. So there is a risk of you oversaturating a population with surveys. So I just want to make sure that we don't fall into that trap.
I think that's certainly part of the working group. We've already developed a plan from the working group, an improvement plan, which we said we would report back to next QSP, where we just need to iron out particular people who are responsible for actions, because there's so much co-production needed to be able to do that. It's quite hard to identify an individual, obviously, who's responsible for that, because it needs to be part of lots of people's role to do that. But I think the focused recruitment on what we're trying to gather is important, isn't it? So we don't exhaust people. People are quite wary of QR codes. Looking at, are we going to introduce SMS messaging? I think there's such a lot of things that we need to make sure we weigh up the benefit against the risk to the patient, isn't it?
Absolutely, and one of the benefit risk equations to look at is we've got a survey which is very well received and which gives us certain information in one aspect of our service. You know, if I take the maxim, if you don't broke, don't fix it. By the same token, we want to cooperate with the national sort of endeavour. So I look forward to the developments on that score with great interest. Any other, Stephen?
Yeah, I suppose just some added clarity really in terms of what form this is going to take forward in terms of engagement with patients and families. So I know from time to time in outpatient centre, a tablet or something's passed around, people are able to complete that. I'm not aware of that ever happening. It's my ignorance, of course. For example, in the chemotherapy day unit, in the radiotherapy waiting area, I'm just wondering, going forward, we've got patients who obviously may not want to be disturbed, but some of them are looking for some meaningful distractions and keep them occupied, perhaps when they're sitting there for several hours. So just only very briefly, how are we going to incorporate things, I suppose, experiences in those areas alongside the more frequently captured outpatient experience?
We had a detailed discussion on this very matter in the Integrated Quality and Safety Group meeting earlier this week. And Emma James, who is the new Director of Nursing and Allied Health Professions and Health Science in the Cancer Service, was present. So it's an area that we are going to review, and Emma will support that around what is going to be our approach going forward. It needs to be multifaceted. It needs to include volunteers. Liaison service, which we did have some time ago, just considering all options around really how do we gather the experience of our users across the cancer service. And we've had sort of I think our at the volume we've had it, but and then from that we will have a plan and we can share that with colleagues.
Thank you. Lindsay, please.
really welcome this and being able to see that kind of a framework that helps us bring together all the good things we're doing, but I think gives us that additional dimension. We were talking about benchmarking earlier and about how we can kind of look at what we do and share that with others, but also learn from what might be going on elsewhere as well. Very keen around the obviously the patient and the donor experience, but very interested as well in the staff experience behind, as you said, behind the donor and patient experience as a staff experience. So just thinking a little bit more about how are we kind of envisaging being able to draw on that, because that, as you say, that could be positive or negative. And I'm aware that I'm taking on the same speak up kind of mantle as well. So just thinking about how are we going to build that in, because you talk mainly about how we're going to get information about experience from patients and donors.
Well, I think so the self-assessment document that you can see has got the 5 areas, isn't it? Which the bit for me, which I think we really need to focus on, is section 2, which is the capacity and capability of effectively collecting feedback. So we've set up this working group where we're looking at obviously workforce involved in that. But for me, from a quality and safety perspective, we need to start having discussions and asking questions that we haven't done before, might feel uncomfortable, you know. So what does it feel like to be part of an investigation process? You know, what does it feel like to be part of, we've introduced meetings called Make It Safe meetings, and we've had some really positive feedback from people about feeling that you can talk about that in a very just culture way. You know, this is what we need to do. We start the meeting saying this is about us being able to find solutions to things that have gone wrong together, you know, really setting the scene. But we've not really evaluated that. So we've got a lot of feedback around anecdotal feedback of what that feels like, but we haven't, you know, so we probably need to introduce more kind of formalised methods for staff to say, you know, maybe even if that, not that I want survey fatigue, but, you know, you attended this meeting, what did that feel like, or some of that, so we can do that. And then using digital stories for our patients, but also for our staff as well, you know, using that mechanism more. So I think for me, section 2 of this self-assessment is where, to me, identified where we need to probably focus most work, especially at the beginning. So thinking about how we do it.
Anne is next, Nicola, if that's okay.
And I think section 2 is really, really important in terms of how we get that feedback, but we also need to be mindful of the infrastructure that we have in place. So things like we do want to be in a position where we can have conversations or have communications with patients in a kind of a real-time way, but mindful at the moment the way we communicate with patients is via letter to their appointments, and it's not always as coherent or as succinct as we'd like it to be. So I think we have got that challenge as our baseline, and we need to feed this in at the same rate. I wouldn't want us to be going, and I'm sure the intention is absolutely not to do that, to text patients about a survey when we can't text patients about their appointments. So we need to align those two things and have them at the same time. Like,
thank you, Nick.
Just 2 things, just picking up on the staff element. I mean, I think the framework's a bit light on the how, if I'm being honest. I think it focuses a lot on population and patient, but not staff. So I think it is something that we need to look at, because of course we have the annual survey, but really, you know, we possibly need to introduce other touch point elements within that. So I think, you know, as Tina said, we need to work that through as part of the group. I also just wanted to draw the board's attention to the leadership section and some of the requirements there, you know, around board, that makes reference to board and senior leadership, and I just think it may be worth us having a dedicated session on this, maybe in a future board development session, you know, around this very topic, aligned with how, you know, we set the culture, isn't it, at the top of the organisation, but really focusing on experience being front and centre of that. So it's just a suggestion for consideration.
So do you want me to do you want to capture that as an action? Yes, Nick, okay. We'll capture that as an action. Sarah, and then I need to begin to wind this item up. Sarah, please.
I was really pleased to see staff experience in here, because I think it does actually recognise that we can't think of these things separately. and that's what we tend to do. And obviously our management arrangements do that to some extent. And what this has done is allowed us to come together. And very importantly, I mean, you mentioned their impact of investigations. And actually, we look at that from an HR perspective. You know, we've been doing the minimising employee harm work around employee investigations, around grievances and so on. So it's a bit about now having a framework under which we can bring those things together and triangulate all of our other staff experience measures. The staff survey is key, but there are many more sources of data that we actually use. So I think this is an excellent opportunity for us to do that.
Thanks, Sarah. So there being no further queries or observations, I'm asking the Trust Board to approve the implementation of the National People's Experience Framework, acknowledging the caveats about capacity and so on that have been outlined, and that there may be a little bit of time to get fully up to speed with all of this. So acknowledging that, are we content to approve this paper, colleagues? We are. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tina, for that. And the next item is also yours, which is 3.6.0, the Trust Quality Priorities. The Trust Quality Priorities have been produced by the 3 Trust Quality Hubs, with specific actions associated with each priority theme. These have been reviewed following feedback from the duty of quality internal audit to make them more smart, which is good news, and have been endorsed by both the Cancer Service and Welsh Blood, as I understand it, going forward, and it's now coming to the Trust Board for approval. So this is another one. Let me just find it. So load it up, Tina, and I'll ask you to. Okay, thank you. Tina, over to you.
So, obviously the priorities are there. We've got 4 overarching sort of strategic priorities really, and then underneath that we wanted much more tangible, kind of something we could measure, something we could action rather than it being more high level. Like we said, these have been based on collaboration with the 3 hubs, but they've also been based on finding from investigations, feedback from patients and donors. So looking at what has happened in 23, 24, have formed what we need to focus on our quality priorities, including some national drivers of things that have to come in based on Welsh Health circulars or areas of work that have been identified as priorities. So happy to take any questions, but our next step with these really of what we need to be looking at is how are we going to properly monitor these every month in an appropriate way or whatever we feel, so that we've got we're able to clearly report through integrated quality and safety group our measurement against them on an agreed timely basis, obviously. So this is the high level priorities. There's still work ongoing, obviously, to make sure that we can monitor them in a meaningful way.
So we've been asked today to approve these sort of priorities, and there's a bit of overlap with the last item, isn't there? For which there is a kind of a plan going forward. So you've got the how essentially for the 4th of the priorities. So are any other issues you want to draw to our attention, Tina?
No issues.
Colleagues, we're just approving the priorities today. Vicky, I can see your hand just popped up.
Thank you, Chair. It's just you introduced this paper at the beginning, but QSP also considered this and endorsed it for board approval, noting some of the detail that Tina's just outlined that needs to be undertaken.
Thanks, Vicky. That's really helpful. And of course, that's included, I think, in the cover paper, isn't it? Yes. Anyway, if there aren't any other observations or queries, the assurance rating 4 has been applied to this initiative. Are we content to approve the proposed trust quality priorities? There's been a due process in arriving at them. They all appear to be perfectly relevant to everybody around this table. So I move we do approve them. Thank you. So 3.7, colleagues, we've got about 20 minutes left of this board meeting. We'll see how we go now. So this one is going to be led by yourself, Sarah. I think this should be quite a brief item, actually, isn't it? This is to present this item, which follows the Supreme Court ruling, which was very recent, on the meaning of sex in the application of the Equality Act and the subsequent trust actions and government actions taken in response to this. So a lot of controversy on social media about it. We're looking to you for clarity now, Sarah.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I'm not sure.
In 5 minutes.
And you've got 2 minutes.
Quite raised to that challenge. But the aim of bringing this today is really to get on board's radar, really, that this is an important matter, that we are considering this in terms of impact on patients, donors and staff, because it does potentially have implications across all of those factors. As colleagues will have been aware from the media, if nowhere else, on the 16th of April, we'll give the ruling on the meaning of sex, particularly only in relation to the definition as under the Equality Act 2010. And I think that's a very important distinction that we need to continue to reinforce. Since then, the Equality and Human Rights Commission have published their interim guidance on the 25th of April. That guidance is being, they are putting out now for consultation a broader set of guidance, which will be on consultation through June and into July. And that's something that, you know, needs to actually then help move this further on. Welsh Government obviously issued a statement as well in response to the original ruling and said that they themselves were going to consider their guidance. And my update as of last Friday is they are still doing that. So there are colleagues in Welsh Government who are, they are intending to issue guidance to public bodies in Wales. But the timelines are not clear on that, as far as I could ascertain from last Friday. So on that basis, we are working in quite a murky space, I think, in terms of where things go at the moment. And I think that reflects the situation across NHS Wales, talking to colleagues, particularly relating to workforce matters. And I know working with Nick and Anne in terms of other peer groups, and particularly what's happening around provision for patient services, which I'm particularly concerned picking up some anxiety from transgender patients, but obviously patients more generally around what this means for them in terms of their experiences of health services. In terms of trust actions, then, we are obviously engaging with our staff network, our LGBTQ+ staff network, in terms of understanding any concerns or issues they might have in the immediate short term, and then obviously continuing to work with them as things become clearer around the EHRC formal final guidance. We have undertaken a gap analysis of provision, and what that's done is given us really more questions than answers in terms of patient services potentially. And also included in that gap analysis, what are our plans in terms of NVCC? And I think that was key for me in terms of what have we baked into our design plans for the new cancer centre going forward, and is there sufficient gender neutral provision within that space to actually support patients and staff. And what we've had back from that team is that there are a raft of provisions in terms of facilities. What we haven't been yet is what the provision is in terms of patient services. So that's obviously work that we need to continue to do. So this is an ongoing piece of work. We are working in, as I said, quite a murky space at the moment. Hopefully things will become clearer in terms of specific requirements for health services. And I think that's absolutely key for us. And, you know, working then in terms of staff implications. I'm not aware of issues that have been raised by staff yet, and we're keeping a close eye on that in terms of our support for our workforce, clearly, and making sure that there is emphasis in terms of support mechanisms available for people. So I didn't want to say any more than that, Chair, just bringing that up into the board today about awareness.
Thanks, Sarah, very much. As you say, we're not sitting waiting for the guidance to come, doing nothing. And you've got to, in the slides that you presented to us, we know what actions you are taking, the gap analysis, etc. So there's activity going on to make sure that we will be compliant and that we will be ready for the guidance when we receive any further guidance from Welsh Government. So that's really helpful. This is a very important issue. You know, it's a very important issue for staff, for patients, for donors, for absolutely everybody. So thank you very much for the work that you're already doing, that you've already started. We're just going to be asked, I will call you in, Lindsay, in just a second, to note the actions that are being taken. At some point, something will come and we're going to need to approve it, I would think. But that will be a bit further down the line. So, but the position we're in today is that we're going to be able to note the actions. Lindsay, please.
It's really helpful to hear, where we're at, and we're still not clear. So it's kind of doing that anticipatory work, isn't it, until we actually know the final kind of guidance, Welsh Government as well as the HRC. I think from what you described there, the one thing I would just want to kind of check out is that, as well as NBCC, we've of course got the lab modernisation in Talbot Green, which I know is staff kind of related, but there will be design kind of things in relation to that we need to take into for staff. But then also thinking about, is there any impact or implications for us in terms of where we have our blood collection centres, both for staff and for donors, in terms of any facilities available in those? Might it restrict us or might it not?
So I think this is a conversation we have to have with WBS, which we haven't had yet. Absolutely, Lindsay. And it's a very important point for us. And in terms of, I suppose, anticipating where this might take us, I think there's some decisions to be made in terms of those locations. So yes, it's absolutely something that we are going to have.
Tina?
I'm not supposed to be this section, so sorry for interfering. But like you said, it must create such anxiety for the transgender community. Are we able to issue some sort of comms to say, obviously there's this uncertainty, however, as a trust we are committing to treating everyone as individuals and this will not impact on your care or treatment with us? Is there some sort of general message, mindful that there's some prophecy there, but just to say, irrelevant of any rulings, we are committed to abiding by our trust values of respect, all of those kinds of things. Just to, if you was a patient or who had cancer or was donating blood, to say, irrelevant of the ruling, we stand by our values when we look after our patients and donors. Would that not be appropriate to do? I'm not sure.
I think one of the controversies is that where you might choose to do that, you have to deem whether that's unlawful or not. Deem whether it's now unlawful, because the ruling has set out certain expectations which you may have thought was perfectly reasonable to deal with everybody on an individual basis, but actually the ruling may mean that you have to deal with things differently. I mean, our value, it doesn't affect our values.
Yes, it's more the values of treated with compassion and, all of those kinds of things.
It is difficult because where somebody might make for me personally, I would go and get changed in that changing room. Well, actually, lawfully, you can't. You have to go into that changing room. That that's and that might be counter to our values, but it's now the law. I think it's really challenging. Yeah.
Sarah, thank you.
Thank you. I think Lindsay's absolutely right. This is a really difficult place at the moment. We have made clear around wellbeing support in terms of activity. What we have done is we've referenced the Welsh Government statement, which does have actually a really helpful paragraph at the end of it around maintaining and continuing support for transgender people. And I think that's what we are continuing to reiterate without then cutting across, as Lindsay said, what may or may not actually be a result of the ruling. So I think it does feel that we're at odds with the way we would naturally treat people as individuals. So I think this is going to be quite difficult for all of us and our staff to actually understand and continue to do the very best they can for everybody, isn't it? Every patient and donor that they have. So I think we will be working very tightly on this as an organisation and making sure that we work with other colleagues across just Wales as well.
Thanks, Tina, for that really helpful suggestion that you made there. But you know, we just have to be extremely careful in these circumstances that we don't inadvertently kind of make a difficult situation even more difficult. So we're asked to note the actions being taken by the trust as presented by Sarah, and note that eventually, I don't think we can put a time scale on this because Welsh Government haven't given us a time scale, I don't think, that there will be some kind of policy or paper that will come through QSP to ask for approval, I would think. So if I can take us to 3.80, which is the Public Quality Safety and Performance Committee highlight report. Very detailed report, Vicky. It's almost as if you were there when you read your report. So I have to say, Vicky, thank you very much. So if I can ask you to take us through your highlight report, because I think there are a few matters you want to escalate to the board.
I think the one issue that we wanted to escalate to the board was the one that, Matt, you've already picked up in terms of the issues that we wanted to highlight. So I think that in itself has been covered. And I think throughout the PMF, then I've picked up and commented on what QSP has endorsed for board approval. So I think, as you say, the notes are very comprehensive, and all of the issues that I would want to raise, we've covered already in my comments. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Vicky. Anybody got any queries to raise with Vicky? As I say, you know, it is almost as if you were there when you read this report, Vicky. It's really comprehensive. Thank you very much for that. And I don't underestimate the amount of time that it took to kind of compile this and put it together. So whoever's responsible for that, I want to say thank you to them as well. And we've got the agreed levels of assurance. I'm just scrolling through. So that's approved. So we come now, please, to 4.20, which is the BECS full business case. Now, what have I missed out?
Yeah.
On strategic planning update. I put a tick there too soon, didn't I? So this is 4.1.0. Let me just open it, please.
Oh, apologies, Chair. I did put my hand up just towards the end when you were speaking there.
When I was summing up.
Yes. I just wanted to draw the board's attention to the Q4 quality and safety report that was attached. I'm sure colleagues have read it. I just wanted to give a level of assurance in respect to the complaints, 30-day complaints response time. As you will note from that paper, we did see a reduction to 50% against the 30 working day target. That was due to some unexpected absences and some very complex concerns. So we have looked at resilience methods going forward. But for the year-end position for the whole of 24-25, we have achieved the government target of 75% response time for concerns.
So I'm looking. Is this appended to the? Have I missed it? Oh, the Q4. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks. Next, so we'll note that, because we've been very good in our compliance with the 30-day turnaround, haven't we?
The numbers are small. It skews the figures quite significantly if we miss a couple.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. Okay, so strategic planning update. So Lauren, if you could please introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just very briefly run through the key items in here. So the first one is the regional cancer programme, and we've been having the updates from the regional work appended to this report over the last couple of cycles. So I thought it'd be interesting for the board to see how that's developing. So the agenda from the April meeting is appended. And to also note that the Ministerial Advisory Group, the MAG, has reported since we last met. So there are a number of relevant matters in there for us as an organisation, including the bringing together of the network, the cancer network, as part of the NHS exec, and the team in the planned care directorate for the Cancer Recovery Fund. Both of those teams are being merged, and as David updated in his CEO report in the last meeting, so he's the SRO for that work going forwards nationally. And what we are doing is working through the outputs from that newly formed national governance structure, which will take the form of an integrated cancer plan. So this will replace all the existing national cancer plans. So the 23 to 26 cancer improvement plan, the cancer quality statements, and the cancer recovery plan, plus the MAG recommendations. So those 4 things are being merged into an integrated cancer plan, which is going through government review at the moment. And then as a region, so that's the 5 organisations, SPNTAF, Cardigan Vale, AB and Powys, will be working through what does that mean for us as a group of organisations, and how do we ensure that we are aligned in our work and are effectively delivering against that integrated cancer plan. So it references briefly in that paragraph to just provide a bit more context as to that work, and it's clearly extremely significant to us going forwards as a regional planning function and as a local planning function. The second item, as it says there, is there's been an extant strategic plan and maturity matrix for a little while, and that as an organisation we will be looking at where we think we currently are on that maturity matrix and where we want to get to over the course of the next year across all of those various capability matters, which will provide some structure and assurance, which will feed into the Strategic Development Committee. And then secondly, there's been a review actually by Alan Davis, who's been co-opted as an advisor into the Audit Committee with us over the last period. He's done a review of NHS Wales planning, and there's been a number of recommendations that have come out that even things I'm sure we always question, all of us question. It always starts in year 1, the type of things that quirks of the NHS planning system. So we'll as part of the Director of Planning peer group, I am being asked to take on the lead, so working with the planning director in government, Samir, on this in how we combine that latest review of planning into the maturity matrix for how NHS planning in Wales develops going forward. So I'll continue to keep the board updated on that. On the integrated medium-term plan, so at the time of writing, we hadn't received feedback on the report. We have, so that some of the draft comments on that, because they're still work in progress and draft, we'll consider in the next meeting. But as it says there, we are planning the and working through the iterations of the material for staff engagement sessions. I mean, the feedback doesn't change the core content, as we'll get into, in terms of each of the service areas, what they need to achieve over the next 3 years, and those core milestones and outcomes. So that's all on track. And then there are a number of strategic planning matters in the INTP, which we'll continue to update in this paper. Women's health, as it says there, and then the review of trust and cancer strategies. So just to kind of picture this together, that's how it's going to pan out over the next few months. So the 10-year Destination 2033 strategy, we have already committed to reviewing the goals of that as part of our response to the Audit Wales report on the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act last year. Yeah. Where they said that we, the feedback was good in that we wanted to not have a separate set of wellbeing goals, that best practice was to integrate them into our organisational goals. They're not two separate things. So we committed to do that anyway. And then in addition, as we also noted in the IMTP, we also need to review those strategic goals in light of the Social Partnership Act. So Sarah and our teams are working together on how we start to shape that. Secondly, in terms of the divisional 5-year plans, the cancer services 5-year plan was 20 to 25. So we are will need to update that this year. And so in the report, it would, likely we would have wanted to do so anyway, given the significant developments nationally, regionally, and locally in terms of our plan for cancer services. So how we shape so we've got two big pieces of work and how we shape our approach to engaging and working through that. We'll discuss at the July Strategic Development Committee with Lindsay's permission. So thank you, Chair. Happy to answer any other.
Thanks, Lauren. Had to keep up a little bit with the paper because you didn't go through the points in the order they're in the paper. But
I did. I just missed a couple out.
Oh, right,
they weren't.
Okay. Anyway, well, I found myself racing up and down the papers, but anyway, very clear, well articulated update. Thank you very much for that. Are there any? I want to open it up to any queries and observations. Lindsay.
Just very briefly to say, I really welcome that as a maybe a refreshed approach, because I know Strategic Development Committee in its very early days was there to try and have some of those early kind of engagement shaping conversations, and then that has kind of took hold of the committee in the sense there was a lot of business to get through. So I think feels like we're getting maybe back into that kind of space again to have that early engagement and help collectively shape some of the strategy going forward. So that's very welcome.
Thanks, Lindsay. Can't see any other hands that are up. So, Lauren, a very helpful update, which in a brief paper and a brief oral update covers a huge amount of activity, work, thinking, consideration, and so on. Don't underestimate that for a minute. But we are content that we note that report. Thanks, Lauren. Now we come to 4.20. This is at the point of the meeting where we should be finishing. We are very close to that point, colleagues. So let's see how we go. So we've got a very important item next, 4.2.0, which is the BECS full business case. And we've got the executive summary and the strategic case in front of us. Peter Richardson is going to present this item. But just to remind colleagues, in May 24, the Trust Board approval was sought for the outline business case for the new business critical blood establishment computer system within, which is what BECS means, which in the Welsh Blood Service. And you will note that very recently, last week or maybe the week before, time is flying, we approved out of committee a standstill period for procurement. And so we'll be updated on that standstill issue and move towards hopefully approving final business case. So Peter, over to you. Thank you.
So in the interest of both time and conversation, probably in the private section of the meeting, I just draw attention to the main points here, which are number one, the strategic case, which as presented has been updated based on our engagement with the marketplace and a further assessment of our needs. And then secondly, to note, as you've already alluded to, Chair, that the procurement process has reached the stage where we've issued a standstill letter notifying bidders of the outcome, and we're currently working through the standstill process itself.
Yep.
So unless there are only any questions, detail behind this, I don't propose to say any of that. I just want to give people assurance that there has also been an updated QIA presented for this. It's not included in the bundle. I'm not sure what's happened there, but I'm quite happy to share that with members outside of the meeting.
Any queries for Peter or for any colleagues on the? So it's the executive summary and the strategic case for the replacement of BECS that we're looking at today, Lindsay.
I think just to say that we considered this at Strategic Development Committee, and particularly the procurement process was something that we looked at, and you know that's been progressed in out of committee. But just to give that assurance to the board that we gave it the consideration it needed in the public's section of the Strategic Development Committee as well.
Thank you, Lindsay. Vicky, right, thank you, Vicky.
Thank you, Chair. It's just the point that Peter made about the QIA, Peter, as you'd expect me to pick up on. It wasn't there, so I didn't have the assurance that it had been completed. I guess to Lindsay's point, in terms of the public consideration of this in Strategic Development Committee, was the QIA presented in that forum?
I'll double check.
Yeah, and if I can just update, the QIA is actually in the private on the page.
Yeah, on the wrong section.
Okay.
So we did submit it. It clearly should have been on both agendas, but
yeah,
it should have been in this paper as well, shouldn't it?
Really? Yeah, it's gone around. So if we could ask that to be uploaded right now, if you want, on lunchtime. Yes, it's available. It's gone into private. It should have been in public also.
Yeah.
Shall we? Let's do that then. Yeah.
If we're able to email that to me, I can have a look at that over lunch break. I guess just for future business cases, it would be helpful for the exec summary to confirm that the QIA has been considered and by whom it's been signed off by, because for Nick and Jazz, that's really important. When this has been considered by the board, we need that clinical sign off at that level. So it's just those points being summarised in the exec summary would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicky. We will get that. Right, I'll just finish speaking, then I'll call Nick in. We'll get that uploaded and circulated within the next minutes. Thank you. The QIA. Nick, please.
Thanks, Vicky. I agree that it's useful to say that the QIA has been considered along, you know, at executive management board and any other committees that a paper's gone to, and the QIA does need to be attached to the papers as we've outlined. So we will always have that, and that will also provide us with details of who the operational sign-off would be at a divisional level if relevant, and you know, where's it been signed off from an executive perspective, and that would usually be Jazz and myself, or one of us if one of us is absent.
Thanks, Nick. So first of all, we note the continuation of the procurement activity during May with the commencement of the 10-day standstill period from the 9th of May, and no doubt we'll discuss some of that as well later this afternoon. But we've had to kind of put a hold on the standstill period, but that will become apparent this afternoon. And approve the FBC exec summary and strategic case for the replacement of a BECS system with the key objective of delivering a safe and compliant BECS implementation by November 27. So still some way off.
A lot of work to do.
A lot of work to do. So are we content to note and approve as I've just outlined? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Peter. So the next item on the agenda is 4.3.0. which is the Public Strategic Development Committee Highlight Report, which Lindsay, you were going to speak to. Thank you.
Yes. So just to remind Trust Board that I spoke to this verbally at the last meeting because the STC Strategic Development Committee meeting was only a few days before Trust Board, and we had, as is noted in the minutes and the action log, we had noted our concern around the trams and had wanted to escalate that to that last meeting. So the highlight report here reflects that. I was just, as I say, reported on that verbally last time. This is the March meeting. We don't yet have the highlight report from the May meeting, and there are some updates which would have come through in the May highlight report. But I think those, particularly in the areas for escalation, those will get picked up in the private session this afternoon. So around trams and around radiology informatics, system procurement or risk, they'll be picked up later on in the next meeting. So unless I think again it's there's a lot kind of covered off in the highlight report. So if anybody's got any questions, then that's fine. I can provide, a couple of points that came up through the May meeting, which I can just update very quickly verbally. One has already been noted earlier, which is that we were looking at the new version of the TAF, the draft proposed version of the TAF. And so as I think what we're trying to do is distinguish between the role of the Strategic Development Committee looking at the TAF and the QSP looking at the TAF. So we were looking at the forward version of what it might be like, and felt that we'd made a lot of progress on that, but also noted importantly that there are tasks like that we need to feel come to a conclusion as well. And that once that's been approved, that it should be allowed to run for a period of time, and where we focus on content rather than on what it looks like, and then it can be reviewed after a period of time. The other area, which again has come up, and it was also highlighted in QSP, which met after Strategic Development Committee in May, was around strategic kind of digital capacity and resilience. And one of the things that we're asking for through SDC is to have a deep dive or a much closer look, which the two Carls, Carl James and Carl Taylor, are going to look at where that sits, because it's clearly something that's come up through QSP as well as an area of concern. Maybe that's a conversation we have outside about whether that's the Trust Board or in one of the committees. But certainly it's something that we highlighted there that there is an action against. So, and that will come through in the highlight report at the next Trust Board meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions for Lindsay? Thanks, Lindsay. So we note the contents of that highlight report, which is the March report, and we look forward to the May report in due course. Item section 5, consent. There are no items for approval under consent, but there are 4 items if section 6 for noting, which include the Public Charitable Funds Committee highlight report. If there are any queries, I'll take them. The Public Audit Committee highlight report, the Trust Seal report. I love to say this, for the affixing of the Common Seal. Lovely statement. And the Trust-wide Policies approved update. So those are the items under consent: 6.30, 6.40, 6.50 and 6.60. They're under consent, so I'm taking them that we're content to approve those under consent. Thank you. Just before I go, I haven't been informed that there's any other business, and given that it's 12 minutes past 1, I'm not really enamoured to take any other business. So I would like now, just before we close this meeting, say, does anybody want to raise any matters that have occurred to them since the sort of discussion that we've had during the board meeting, which they didn't get a chance then to raise at the time, maybe because I was racing us through the agenda a little bit and whatever. But I always ask this at the end of the meeting, if anybody wants to raise any matter on any item, I invite you to do so now. And I'm holding my breath. Gareth, please.
Diolch Cadeirydd, rwy wedi'ch rhybuddio chi ynglyn â hyn, ond hoffwn i fynd nôl os gwelwch yn dda at eitem 3.3, y cyfrestyr risg.
3.3. Yeah.
Ag yn benodol at appendix 2, lle mae yna bapur sydd yn adolygiad o risgau ynglyn â'r weithlu. Ag dwi'n croesawu y papur yna, ond yn sylwi nad oes unrhyw linellau amser yn erbyn unrhyw un o'r pethau sy'n cael eu canolbwyntio fyna. A hoffwn ni ofyn i'r papur na gael ei ddiweddaru gyda llinellau amser.
Diolch Gareth. Dwi'n meddwl mai beth yw cydweithio gyda Sarah i gael gweld os mai just mater o admin bod ni ddim wedi cynnwys y dyddiad yna yw e. Dwi'n siŵr bod y wybodaeth yna'n deitig, so nhw'n ni bigo hwnna lan, cymryd hwnna fel pwynt gweithredu, a falle rhannu'r papur mwy diweddar yna i'r bwrdd tu allan i'r cyfarfod cyn y cyfarfod nesaf.
Yeah, as soon as can be arranged.
Yes,
yeah,
rather than
be circulated. We won't wait for the next board meeting for that. And if there are any queries when you see those timelines, I invite you to send them to Non or to myself, and we'll pick them up.
That's great. Thank you. Diolch, Gareth.
Thank you. So I'm moving to come to the close of the meeting. Colleagues, the next public meeting will take place on the 31st of July. We're going to have an extraordinary Public Trust Board meeting on the 26th of June to approve the Trust's annual accounts and annual report, and I think you've all already got that in your diaries. So now I'd like to, as well as thanking you all for your contributions today, I'd like to call the meeting to a close, and we need to adopt the resolution that representatives of the press and other members of the public be excluded from the remainder of this meeting, having regard to the confidential nature of the business to be transacted, publicity on which would be prejudicial to the public interest in accordance with section 1(2) Public Bodies Admissions to Meetings Act 1960, paragraph 67. I should be able to say that in my sleep, shouldn't I? So, colleagues, please note that in our afternoon session, we're going to go through some general business, minutes, action log, etc. As always, we will be discussing the Whitchurch land update. We'll do the private risk register. We will be picking up the issue on trams, which has occurred a few times this morning, the Bexfull business case, a Plasma for Medicines update, and the private committee highlight reports. We'll also have the Shared Services Partnership Committee Assurance Report and the Joint Commissioning Committee highlight report. So those are the items we'll be looking at this afternoon. And just thank you all for your attention and attendance today. We're 16 minutes late, but we do have sufficient time for a half-decent lunch break. So look forward to seeing you all at 2 o'clock. Thank you, colleagues.